Okay, well, I wouldn't look at us either.
Yep,
but-
we're done.
Okay, all right.
All right.
It's official.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for coming to the meeting tonight. And it's our first meeting of 2018. I see everybody mixed it up today here. That makes it easier for Zach to escape because he's at the end.
That's right.
We know your plan here. So today is the January the 8th, and we have our regularly scheduled Planning Commission meeting, which was advertised quite profusely. I saw it in several places, so we do pay attention to these things. So our first order of business is every year about this time, we take a look at our selves and we make election of a chair and vice chair for the Planning Commission for the coming year or the year that we're currently in right now. And I just wanted to say for the record that if you'll have us, Paul and I would like to continue to serve in that capacity, if that is your pleasure.
I nominate the current slate.
And I see Mr. Mahoney down there, my friend.
But let's give everybody a chance to,
Yes.
they have different
Yes.
nominations.
Yes, so are there any other nominations for that?
There are others that want to do it.
Move the nominations be closed.
You see
Second.
they're just rolling right through there.
Okay.
Yep. You're stuck with it.
You didn't give me a
I
chance.
mean, yay, congratulations.
It's a good thing I've known him for a very
I
long
abstain.
time.
Did you really? Oh,
You're abstaining? Can I say? Okay, on the question to reelect the current chair and vice chair, just say aye. I don't think we need to do a roll call.
Aye.
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 2 ayes. Yeah.
I got 4 ayes, so I count for more.
Well, we are off to a great start. This is a very jovial group. We're not super serious, but we can be very super serious. Well, on our agenda tonight, we have a, well, I guess the thing is, John, if we reverse this and do the public hearing, would that be upsetting to you?
No.
Okay, so is it okay with you guys if we go ahead and deal with the public hearing and
Didn't go into kind of the double work session.
go into the double work session? And that way, if they are wanting to stay, talk about alternative mobility targets, they are more than welcome. I can see they're like, woo, yeah. It's a fascinating topic, yes. All right,
From,
so we will go to the public hearing planning file in R 17-0010, Natural Resource Overlay District Review, application for deck expansion at 379 Barker Avenue. And because this is our first public hearing, I do have to read the fabulous script, so bear with me. If you know it, just mouth along with us. This is I just read the planning file number, and it's scheduled for tonight. A staff report has been prepared for this application and has been made available to the public 7 days before the first hearing. Hopefully, this is the only hearing. The staff report identifies approval criteria that applies to each applicant's proposal. Staff has analyzed that criteria, which is contained in the staff report. The quasi-judicial hearing procedure that the commission will follow is set forth in state law and in the Oregon City Municipal Code. And to our right on the board is the public hearing procedure over there. Anyone wishing to speak should fill out a speaker's card, and somebody did already. And we will begin all testimony by stating your name, and testimony and evidence should be directed towards the applicable approval criteria. If you believe other criteria apply in addition to those addressed in the staff report, identify and discuss those criteria and explain how and why you believe they apply to the application under consideration. A person may submit any written material while the public record is open on the application. Any written materials received by city staff during the time period which the public hearing is open will be placed in the record. Written materials submitted during the public hearing must be presented to the staff in order for it to be part of the record. If a person intends to use PowerPoint presentations, oversized poster boards, reports, pictures, or other exhibits in their oral testimony to be placed in the record, copies must be submitted to the city staff while the record is open. If they are not, they will not be included as part of the record. Any person wishing a continuance to present additional evidence and testimony or to keep the record open to respond to new evidence must make that request before the public hearing testimony of the hearing is closed. The Planning Commission makes a decision with which you disagree. Any issue you may wish to appeal must have been raised for consideration of the City Commission or the Land Use Board of Appeals or both. without raising the issue on the record with sufficient specificity and accompanied by statements or evidence that the city and all parties can respond to, the issue will not be deemed appealable to the State Land Use Board of Appeals. So if you hear the word LUBA, that's what we're talking about. In addition, the failure of an applicant to raise constitutional or other issues relating to the proposed conditions of approval with sufficient specificity to allow local government or its designee to respond to those issues precludes an action for damages in circuit court. So we're going to again open file NR 170010. Does any commissioner have any ex parte contacts, conflicts of interest, bias, or any other statements to declare? And have you all visited the site? So we'll start with Zach.
Nothing to declare, and I have not visited the site recently.
I drove by the site.
Any ex parte or any?
Nothing else to declare.
Okay.
No ex parte or the like, but I am familiar with the site, having worked in the house behind and grew up with a family that's on the other side of the stream.
Oh.
So I'm familiar with the stream bed, having run around in it more than once.
Okay. Did you scare the fish?
No,
Okay.
the fish, they have a tough time going up that ladder.
Okay, no conflicts. I regularly walk my dog up and down Barker Avenues. I'm familiar with the site.
No conflicts. I'm familiar with the area, not this particular actual location.
No conflicts. I'm familiar with the site only through the aerial photographs and the maps and the staff report.
I do not have any ex parte contacts to declare. When I visited the site, I did not see anybody, and I am familiar with Coffee Creek and the other issues involving that particular stream. So I think we are okay to proceed unless anybody has any comments or questions or concerns about our declarations. Seeing none, we will move along. So the staff report, please.
Thank you. All right. I'm Diliana Vasileva, Assistant Planner for the city, and this is the staff report for planning file NR 1710, which is a Type 3 Natural Resource Overlay District review for a deck expansion for the property located at 379 Barker Avenue. This is a vicinity map of the site. The property is shown in green, and in purple is the city's map natural resource overlay district based on the 1999 Oregon City local wetland inventory. So as you can tell, the entire property is within the mapped overlay. In this area, the Natural Resource Overlay District, or NROD, comes from Coffee Creek, which runs along the eastern property line of the subject site. It is a tributary of the Willamette River and flows northward along the eastern property line.
Isn't the light blue line?
And just some background on the property. It's approximately 10,500 square feet in size. It is zoned R10, single family dwelling district. It's developed with a single family home constructed in 1996, which included a rear deck that was approximately 119 square feet in size. It's shown in gray here. The original deck included a set of stairs and a concrete landing, as well as pavers leading down to Coffee Creek for a total impervious surface associated with the deck of 169 square feet. And this is just an aerial photo of the original deck. You can see here, and the pavers leading down to Coffee Creek.
What date is that picture?
I believe that was the 2016 picture. So in the summer of 2016, the original deck was expanded to a 269 square foot deck. It is shown in gray here, so it included a second platform, 2 sets of stairs, and it is set back approximately 15 feet from Coffee Creek. And this is just a side-by-side comparison of the original deck and the expansion. So as you can tell, the expansion encroached approximately 10 feet closer to the creek than the original deck, and it resulted in a net increase of impervious surface of 100 square feet. And these are just some photos provided by the applicant of the expanded deck. So this property originally came to us through code enforcement because the deck was constructed without going through the land use process for the natural resource reviews. So the applicant is now retroactively going through that process and is working with a qualified environmental professional who went out on site and delineated the natural feature Coffee Creek and prepared a delineation report and a mitigation plan for the deck project. We did receive 3 public comments on this application. The first 2 were included as exhibits in the Planning Commission packet. The third one we received after the distribution of the staff report from Paul Edgar. And none of the comments, which was provided to you tonight, by the way, and none of the comments that we received indicate that an approval criteria has not been met or cannot be met through conditions of approval. And I've listed the applicable criteria of our code that applies to this application, which is primarily Chapter 1749. I also went through and picked out these specific sections in Chapter 1749 that are applicable to the project, and Chapter 1750, which is our procedural chapter, is also applicable. So based on the delineation report that was prepared by the applicant's natural resource specialist and Table 1749, 110 in our code, the vegetated corridor associated with Coffee Creek is 50 feet in width because the slopes adjacent to the creek are less than 25%, and it is not a fish-bearing stream or intermittent stream, so it falls into that category that's highlighted in gray, which requires a 50-foot protected vegetated corridor. And the vegetated corridor is shown here on the applicant's delineation. The dashed line here is the 50-foot buffer, so approximately half of the lot is located within the vegetated corridor. So this deck project falls into 2 different sections of our code. On the left-hand side is OCMC 1749-080J, which allows for replacement, additions, and alterations of existing structures, provided that the ground level impervious surface is not increased. So the 169 square feet that was part of the original deck falls into this category, meaning that it is exempt from NROD review and it doesn't require mitigation. And really quick, I just want to pause here to explain when we talk about ground disturbance of the deck, we're not only considering the posts that support the deck that are actually physically in the ground, but we consider the entire surface area of the deck as disturbance, even though it may not be directly touching the ground. The reason being is that that space under the deck doesn't provide the same opportunity for a habitat area as a wide open area where trees and shrubs could grow. So that is also considered impervious surface or disturbance, even though it's only the posts that are physically in the ground. And then the 100 square feet of additional disturbance that was created by the deck expansion is subject to the code on the right-hand side there, OCMC 1749-090A. Use is allowed under prescribed conditions, which states that alterations or additions to existing structures which are not exempted are subject to compliance with 1749-130, which is standards for existing development. So normally we would review NROD applications through a type 2 or sometimes a type 1 process. The reason that this is before you today is the section highlighted in red there, which states that alterations or additions that exceed 500 square feet of additional disturbance or propose encroachment closer than 1/2 the distance of the regulated NROD buffer have to be processed as a type 3 application. So the deck expansion was only 100 square feet, which is less than the 500 square feet allowed by this section, but because the deck is set back approximately only 15 feet from the creek, it encroaches closer than 1/2 of the 50-foot buffer, which would be the 25-foot mark. So that's why the type 3 application is required. The applicant also has to demonstrate compliance with section 1749-200, adjustments from standards. The application has to show that there are no feasible alternatives for the activity that would comply with the NROD standards, that the proposal has fewer adverse impacts on significant resources than actions that would meet development standards, that the proposal includes the minimum intrusion into the NROD, that fish and wildlife passage will not be impeded, and that all other applicable NROD standards, with the exception of the standard that's being adjusted, can be met, and they also must provide adequate mitigation for the disturbance. The application was prepared by the applicant's natural resource consultant, who identified that the criteria for adjustments from standards is met, and the application also gets reviewed by the city's natural resource consultant, David Evans and Associates, who also confirmed that the application is in compliance with the criteria for adjustments from standards. So as far as mitigation, our code requires mitigation at a 2-to-1 ratio based on the square footage of disturbance. Since the applicant has proposed an additional 100 square feet of disturbance, a 200 square foot mitigation area is required. Our code also provides a formula for calculating the number of trees and shrubs that are required to be planted as mitigation. In this case, 1 tree and 5 shrubs were required. And the applicant has proposed 1 tree and 6 shrubs, as well as some ground cover. This is their mitigation plan. The mitigation area is shown in kind of the dotted pattern here. And again, this was also reviewed by the city's natural resource consultant, who confirmed that the mitigation area is adequate for the impact, and it was calculated correctly, and that the species being proposed are appropriate for the site. So we do have some recommended conditions of approval for a revised mitigation plan with a couple of tweaks. And we also have a condition for a copy of the recorded covenant that has to be recorded for the mitigation area, a financial guarantee for the mitigation plantings, and to ensure that all invasive species within the mitigation area are removed, as well as a condition to ensure compliance with monitoring and maintenance standards for the mitigation area. So staff recommends approval of planning file NR 1710 as conditioned in the staff report.
Are there
Any questions?
any questions of staff?
Yeah, I've got one.
Okay.
This was discovered through a code enforcement procedure?
Correct, yeah. So originally, they went into code enforcement with our building division because I believe the deck also requires a building permit. So they came into our office to talk about what is required, which is when we realized that the deck was in the NROD and it would require a natural resource review.
But the deck hadn't been built.
It had been built.
Oh, it had been built.
So how was it discovered? I was wondering the same thing. Did code enforcement get called on it or something, or?
That's how it happened.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Usually it is complaint-based.
Okay,
That's how it happens.
okay. I'm just wondering myself, I'm still confused by all of this.
Yeah, I was wondering if this deck is in the FEMA floodplain at all.
It is not.
Okay. And so if it's half within the vegetated corridor, would that be considered non-conforming? And if so, does the Oregon City Municipal Code allow for an expansion of a non-conformity? Does that apply to this case?
So what would apply is the section that allows for replacement or alterations to an existing structure, provided that the impervious surface isn't increased. So if they had rebuilt it exactly as it was, then it would have been exempt from the NROD review per that section. But because of the expansion, the NROD review is still required, and they have to mitigate for that additional disturbance.
It sounds like to me
But-
that it would have required a permit regardless.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just wondering.
Before it was expanded because of how far it is off the ground.
Right, I think it would have required a building permit depending on the height, but it would have been exempt from the NROD review.
Right, but I mean, is this considered a non-conforming use since the house is already halfway into the buffer?
Yeah, I think it would be considered a non-conforming structure.
Okay, and so the structure was built after the or before or after the NROD line was established there?
The original was built before, and obviously the expansion was after, so
So that
anything.
became non-conforming.
I think it said
So then I guess the question I have,
1999.
the question I have for staff is, if it's non-conforming, can that non-conformity be expanded by adding the deck?
By adding more to the
By
deck
adding
is
more
what you
square
mean,
footage
yeah.
or more impervious area?
It could be expanded, but it's still subject to all the NROD standards. So they still would have to mitigate for the expansion and go through the NROD review process.
Okay.
Guys? No, Vernon? None for you, Damon? I think you already answered a couple of my questions. You said that the site was created in 1993 under planning file MP 9203, and that was prior to the enactment of the current stream and habitat protections. But I guess my question, in hindsight, would have been, we probably knew then that Coffee Creek was there, I would suspect. I mean, I'm thinking, would I have known Coffee Creek was still there? Because in 1993. Then you answered the question about permits. So my question involving the area between the deck and the stream bed is that, so you've got a lawn, and knowing most people have lawns, was there anything said by the consultants regarding putting chemicals on the lawn that might possibly leach into Coffee Creek, which I think I would have a concern about? And even if they're digging up some of the area, you put your lawn fertilizer or whatever it is on it and then down to the ground, and Coffee Creek is literally like right there. So is there any concern about that? I didn't see anything in the report, but that was the first thing that I thought of when I saw it. Was I said, oh, well, we've got a lawn there, goes right down to the creek.
Yeah, I don't think that their consultant discussed that, or our consultants didn't provide comments on that either. And I don't know that there's, I can look in the prohibited uses of the NROD code to see if there are limitations on
I'm assuming one of the people in the
type of
audience is
chemicals.
the consultant? Yes, so we'll ask that when you get up here. Let's see, I may have one more little note here. You've thoroughly, so maybe this was just a little bit of a typo on page 11, the top of the page where it says finding complies as proposed. It says the applicant has proposed an alteration to an existing structure within the NROD. So I said, isn't the deck already done? Which you said, yes, it is.
Sorry, I'm not sure I understand the
Well,
question.
you have he's proposing an alteration. Well, the alteration has already been completed.
Oh, I see. So you're saying to not say
Well, I
has
was just wondering if that
proposed.
was there something else that was going to happen to the deck?
No.
If it's proposed, okay. So then it's not proposed. So the deck is already there and this
But it hasn't been approved, so.
hasn't been approved, right?
So I have a question, so I can understand it. So was the house,
House was
Under-
built in 96, I
96.
believe, yes.
is it still within that 50
Yes. Could you
feet?
go
So the
back to
house-
that? Could you go
so
back to
the
that
house is,
slide?
and then the deck was there, part of the house, and this is just an addition?
I don't know. I think
Yes.
Mr. Dyer can
I'm
maybe
really
answer
confused
that
by this,
question.
to be
I
honest.
suspect that if you look at that picture of the back of the house,
Yeah, I'm
the only
looking.
way you can get to the back there is unless you jump off, which I don't think people are jumping out the back door there, is steps or some sort of decking. I mean, there's got to be some access, so he can probably talk
So
about
how
that too.
far is the
And
back of the house to the creek?
see,
So
Without the deck or anything?
can you turn on your presentation so you can see what she's?
Because I'm looking right here on the pictures
Yeah.
of it, and I'm trying to,
But she's got the line there.
So-
Paul's got it right here. So look at Paul or
It's the middle, too.
look at Paul's or.
So
I'm looking at.
Yeah.
the expansion of the deck is approximately 15 feet from the creek, and then I think the house is an additional, I'm just estimating based on this, but I think an additional 12 feet, so it's about 26, 25 feet back.
I mean, 15 feet from the creek, the deck, and then the deck itself is, I'm looking here,
Yeah,
16
5
feet,
feet.
and then the house,
7 feet,
so it's
yeah. So
28
that's-
feet
yeah.
from the creek, the back of the
That's
house?
5, and
I
that's
think it's
14,
closer
that'd
to about
be-
25,
Okay,
26.
and then the deck's there, and then
Then you got-
the grass and that area.
This.
Okay, sorry.
All right, are you ready to have the applicant and the applicant's representative come up? Yes, I think so. Okay, Kevin, please.
I don't know if it's an adder.
You probably better come on up with him. Just in case. It's always good to have a buddy next to you.
But that doesn't mean that.
Well, thank you for hearing our application. I appreciate it.
Just say your name.
My name's Kevin Deere. I'm the property owner for this application. I'm third generation living in Oregon City, lived here my whole life, raised my kids here, and it's home. I've been to all 50 states, seen lots of the country, and I just come back here, call it home. Carrie, my partner, joined me about 6 years ago up here, and we decided then this was going to be our forever home. And we wanted to age in place here and continue to live here, live out our days here. So part of that was the vision of transforming the backyard. We hired a landscape architect, Donica Guerre, I think it's pronounced, who laid out a beautiful plan for our backyard, starting with the deck that you see before you. And at that time, we were told that we did not need a permit for that. Obviously, that isn't the case, but
By whom?
that was by Donna. So that was our understanding going into this. The second thing that is a wrinkle here is I did not know the NROD had changed. The covenants that I have for my home say 15 feet. So those both sort of conspired against what we tried to do here. So again, we wanted to live here forever. We want to age in place. We wanted to do a nice job on the deck. And we weren't trying to do an end run around anything, to be honest with you guys. It just worked out that way. So we've done everything in our power to comply with every request given to us and spent close to $7,000 just working on this plan to present to you today. So we're not trying to pull a fast one. We're trying to do what it takes. We're looking for some middle ground here to help us preserve the deck and not have to tear it down, which frankly would cause more disturbance to the site anyway. So we're here to really ask for approval, and we're here to do that tonight. So questions for, this is Tina Fairley. She's from Habitat, Pacific Habitat, and she did all the fine work that you've been reading about, painstaking detail, and hopefully she can answer any technical questions you have.
Digital marketing is straightforward, easy to do, and the best investment you'll ever make in business.
What's going on?
So when did you buy the house?
I bought it new in 1996. I've been there 20
1996, okay.
plus years.
Okay.
It was still being built when I bought it.
So Tina? Okay, he's going to go take it out in the lobby there. So, hi Tina, could you just
Hi.
say your name and
Tina Farrelly with Pacific Habitat Services.
you can move that thing around, so otherwise he's going to start waving at us through the glass.
Oh, yeah.
Can you answer the question about lawn?
Yeah, I'm not sure what the what Kevin and Carrie do with their lawns. They don't have any storage of chemicals within the NROD area that I'm aware of.
No.
And there's nothing in the code that talks about what herbicides are or not allowed. I'm not sure if they even use them, but.
Yeah, I'll tell you, we use a company called ProScape that does that work for us, and I don't know what they do. The lawn's been there since I moved in, so it's not additional as a part of what we did with the deck. It's all been there, so.
Well, I know it may or may not be in, but obviously since you're near the creek, that's
Yeah, I
something we all.
No,
If I lived near a creek, I don't think I would be using any stuff on my
I would
lawn
agree.
for
I would agree.
pollution or whatever.
That's probably why the goldfish we dumped in there died.
You think?
Maybe that's why the piranha died too.
Well, that could be a problem.
unintended consequence.
Yeah. Of course, it might have been that it was winter and it froze over, but whatever.
Any questions for Tina or for Kevin?
No, it looks like you did a very minimal decking, like you were aware of a 15-foot, and that's why the lower one is,
It's within that.
I could see you making it much bigger, and you didn't. You were very minimal in your design, so.
Right.
So you're going to take out the little concrete pad and the little stepping stone thingies?
Yes, absolutely.
Well, they don't do any good because nothing's there anymore, so. It's
No, but it's
a
an
few more
impervious,
square
it's
feet,
an
yeah.
impervious surface.
Nothing to step
Yeah.
to there.
Although I guess I'd almost argue about the deck being disturbed and impervious and having to mitigate for it, because I'm sure the possums and raccoons appreciate a dry place to go.
We had a raccoon up there the other night, yes.
Yeah. As long as you don't have skunks, that's my problem.
Oh, and
Well, you can screen it.
We have a skunk parade that goes
I just
up
have a
there
question
every
about your plant list. Juncus effusus, is that a native?
Yeah, it's on the Oregon State
Is
Native
it?
Plant
Yeah,
List,
I'm
yeah.
just familiar with it.
All right.
They're all pretty much native.
All right, because, yeah, it's usually associated with reed canary grass, which is not.
Not, yes.
So,
No.
okay.
So again, we hired Donna again to do this mitigation plan, gave her the approved list of planting, so it should be within compliance.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
I'm not sure of the necessity, should this be approved, of why the pavers have to be removed. Is it because of impervious surfaces? Or would that provide a
Yes,
way to
that's it.
walk to the edge of the,
It's impervious surface.
okay,
That's
so
what-
even if that was to walk to the edge of the creek to look at or something like that, you'd have to walk on the lawn, all that, but then they have to be removed because they're impervious.
It's that many square feet less they have to
Right.
deal
Is
with.
that,
part of the
that's
mitigation
your
plan.
that's what you said in your report.
Or my assumption is a pervious paver could probably be
You
used.
could use pervious paver.
Good suggestion.
That way, it
But
just,
those are still.
Nice to have some kind of landing,
water
yes, but
percolates down through it and
right now we plan on, that's part of the mitigation plan is to remove all the impervious items that are listed there, so.
Well, they don't do you any good. It's bad anyway. It's not like
Fair
you're
enough.
repurposing them. They're just
Yeah.
holes in your lawn, right?
Sort of
So it's good to
lawn.
get your lawn back in place too, so.
The clay layer.
Yeah, I don't have any questions. It's all, I'm glad to see there isn't like ivy all over everything. I would have
On the other side of the creek, there's a lot of blackberries. In fact,
Yeah.
I'd be happy to get rid of those as part of this plan too, if that helps.
Well, you'd have to
Careful what
pull
you
them
wish
out by hand because you can't use any
I
chemicals.
understand. I've done it before.
Yeah.
Been done that.
Have you noticed the rise and fall of the creek and
Yes.
its width varying
the width is-
in these rain?
It has grown
Has it?
over the last several years, yeah.
But during the summer time, it dries up, I presume.
No, it's a full year-round
It's
creek.
year-round.
Is that right?
Yeah.
And your house was built prior to the boundaries for the protection of the creek being established?
It was, there was a 15-foot riparian zone, they called it back then, that we had to respect, and we did. We didn't know about the change for whatever reason that happened later on that moved that back to 50 feet. So that's how this happened.
Might be a good idea to make a note to send a brief notice, because obviously your map that you showed, those other houses that are within it, how do we know they know? They probably don't know. Maybe, you know, just, hey, by the way, you're in this, call us.
When you mentioned the 15 feet, was that from the city code, or was that, are you in some kind of an HOA and they told you?
No,
that you-
it was part of the covenants in my purchase of the home.
It was a minor partition.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it was 15 feet from the center of the creek at that point.
We might have done that, you know.
15 feet from the center of the creek.
I'm not having any memory, it was 93.
Yeah.
Does that creek ever come up and touch your lawn? I see it right
No.
here. I'm looking at the pictures. It
No.
stays within its boundaries. It
Thank
doesn't
goodness.
flood.
Yeah, it comes right up there.
I'm looking at the pictures of the
Just as
whole
long
area.
as
here,
the
so-
drainage pipe over the edge of the cliff doesn't clog.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Coffee
the-
Creek
yeah.
is interesting in the fact.
Anyway, it comes
down
up
through
pretty
this
high, but
neighborhood.
it's never crested, no.
Okay, all right.
Comes down through, comes from up where you are down through here, through, you know, the crazy network of weird wooden pipes and stuff.
Yeah,
that
I know.
come.
On the other side of Singer Hill.
And we have people in this neighborhood who have Singer Creek, Coffee Creek,
Yeah.
and they get water in their,
Okay, quick question to staff.
Basements.
Is the mitigation plan that they have proposed, I'm looking at 1 vine maple, 1 red flowering currant, 3 mahonia, 2 evergreen huckleberry, 8 juncus fusus, and then the polystigmum, 7 of them. Is that an adequate mitigation plan?
They've actually done more than
what was
required.
required,
Above and
right.
beyond, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay. Any other questions?
One question maybe, the slope, the picture shows that there is a slight slope to the lawn from the end of your stairs over to the edge of the lawn. Okay, and then how far beyond the edge of the lawn would you say the creek bed is, or the top of the creek bed? It's hard to judge in there because you got vegetation.
Yeah, it's actually eroded over the years, so the creek bed itself on that side is maybe expanded 8 to 10 inches. So the lawn is probably, right now, 8 to 10 inches from the edge of the creek.
What was it again?
Right now, it's about 8 to 10 inches from the edge of the creek.
So what we're seeing right here, like, I guess the photograph's not up there, but I see green lawn in the background and brown up the front. That green lawn back there is your lawn.
Yes.
The outcropping of his house.
This is a different picture than what I'm looking at.
This is not the lawn.
Yeah, so you can see in the near side there where that,
Vern, why don't you
Okay.
look behind you
Oh, I
there?
see right there, and that
See?
creek's
yeah,
right there.
that's
Yeah.
pretty narrow
It's right there.
So I'm looking at this one of the full creek right here.
Yeah. So maybe their walkway lights are gonna disappear in there.
Yeah, it's
somewhere.
already gone.
Oh, it's already gone, okay.
But still, the slope of the lawn there is a little slope, but it's not a bank that rainwater would flood out.
No.
And you could see the water creeping towards the creek.
Yeah, the
It's
erosion.
fairly flat.
Hasn't crested at this point, but you know, the way we got things going around here, it's,
Is there any paint, stain, or maintenance that you're planning that might be good for us to be aware of for the decks?
It's Brazilian hardwood, it's Ipe, and as far as I know, requires very little work. It was finished with, I forget the brand of it. It was finished with a penetrating oil. And as far as I know, that's sufficient.
Thanks.
anything else? Okay, thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
And do you have an extra card for Tina to fill out? Yeah. Well, not a card, sorry, a piece of paper.
Great.
Yeah, I was just going to ask if there was anybody else, because I have no other slips.
I see a
Okay.
few coming up.
Paul, and looks like Doug, so.
Okay.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry, that was me. I let go too soon. Thank you.
Good afternoon, members of the Planning Commission. Paul Edgar. I live in Kenema, and I'm part of the organization called Friends of Kenema. We like to look at environmental issues and historic preservational issues. And I did take a good look at this particular plan and the review that was done. I thought it was most thorough. I could not find one error that I felt was that I would even want to comment on. Only thing I would love to do is see this type of thoroughness used in Kenema, and where we have streams and creeks, and we have Coffee Creek. I have Coffee Creek running, a tributary running between my house and my garage. And so I see all of these things. I care. I want to compliment the city for the work that was done and on this, and hopefully we can continue to do good work like this in the future. Thank you.
So Paul, let me ask you, because I was confused by this. Is this referring to something else entirely different?
Yeah, this is, I look at that, and my biggest issue was wow, look at what they did, but now we have other areas in Kenema where we want to build right into a wetlands,
Okay.
and we don't even consider that with no riparian setbacks, build it right up to the property lines. And I thought to myself, wow, here we have somebody doing that in Kenema, and now we have somebody being a good steward, doing it right, and they go to this nth effort.
Okay.
And so it's just, my comment is really, we shouldn't have two sets of standards. Thank you.
Yeah, I thought it was a reference to this. Thank you. The other question I have for staff is maybe I'm missed something. Who's Dorothy Dalsrud?
She's the person who submitted testimony.
But all she
Or
said
comments.
is, looks good to me, I'm gonna
Yeah.
go look
Okay.
at the place.
Well, I read the comments, but I didn't know
Yeah.
who she was, if she was.
She's a
part of-
person that lives here in Oregon City.
Okay, I didn't know if she was part of the neighborhood or neighbor or something like that.
Right, Doug? Sorry.
That's fine. Doug? Who is on our are you still on the Natural Resources Committee?
Doug Neely, I'm not speaking for the Natural Resource Committee. I am chair, but we didn't actually look at this particular issue. I got one question
You
of staff.
did or did not?
We did not.
You did not, okay.
So I'm not speaking for the Natural Resource Committee. Dorothy, incidentally, is a member of the Natural Resource Committee. The question is the number of plants that are planted. Is that per property, or is there a linear stream basis for setting the number of plants for mitigation purpose?
There's a calculation in our code that's based on the square footage of disturbance. So you divide by a number and then you multiply by a number, and you get the number of trees, and then you do a similar calculation for the number of shrubs.
Okay. One concern I had just looking at what was presented here, particularly since they're having problems with the bank eroding away, is there going to be enough setback of the plantings to guarantee if you lose another 2 or 3 or 4 feet there, would you lose the plantings? Yeah. The other concern that I would have, and I'm sure the property owner wouldn't want this to happen anyway, is that if those plants don't survive, do they have to make replantings? And I don't know if that's in your code or not.
Yeah, so our code requires a 5-year monitoring and maintenance period, during which the applicant will provide an annual report of what plants are still alive, and if at any time the remaining plants from the mitigation planting drop below 80% of what was originally planted, they will have to replant within that 5-year monitoring period.
Okay. The other thing I was going to mention is probably not that relevant. I was asking the consultant of the applicant here. Apparently, the plant next to the house there is in fact a vine maple. The only comment I was going to make on that, and then I'll have a recommendation that doesn't deal with this application at all, but vine maples are usually plants that grow in a forested area. They like shade. Intense sunlight, if they're growing in intense sunlight, they usually don't survive. And I don't know if that's the appropriate species or not. The request I was going to make is a rather simple one, but when you have mitigation going on that involves plantings, it would be nice if the Natural Resource Committee could just take a look at the plans ahead of time before it comes to you. And that's a recommendation that I'm making that probably has to go through another body. I don't know.
I think we had talked about that at our work session. When
Yeah.
we had that last year, we said that it would be great if you guys could take a look at it before we saw it.
Yeah, and we didn't see it. We get all the application. Unfortunately, we get all the applications coming to us, whether it was in a natural resource overlay or not. And so we look at them. This one happened to be in one that I took a look at, but it would be nice if the ones in fact are natural resource overlays, we do have a
So you
opportunity to look
did
at.
get the notice.
Huh?
You did get the notice.
We get the notice, but nobody comes to us specifically in terms of recommendations of species or anything of that nature.
In light of workload and all that kind of stuff, is there any way that there can be like a committee of 2 people to look at it informally through email? Would that work? Would that be acceptable?
In the future, you mean?
Yeah, instead of having to go for,
Well, we meet on a monthly basis.
yeah, okay.
It just might be a timing thing, you know.
Might be
before
the
you
notice
law.
comes to you, and then you need to send it out to the committee
Yeah.
so that
Yeah.
people can take a look at it. Because I recall that we did talk about that, and if you got the notice, then
We do get the notice, but
I guess let's make this a partnership thing. So you need to circulate it to your people as well.
well, I think all my people got the notice,
Yeah.
and I looked at it, and but it would be nice if we have an opportunity to actually formally comment about it.
So when they get the notice, do they get the little? So when I get a notice from McLaughlin, I get the little form that says, here's your comment.
We do.
Okay. So I think I'm gonna have to put the ball back in your court to say, if it's timing in terms of your committee, then you need to get your committee to take a look at it in between your meeting. That's the way you're gonna have to work that. And then get the comments back to staff during the time frame that they ask for comments so that it can be put in the staff report.
What is the time frame normally? Coming to the planning commission.
Well, I'd like to know what it means administratively. Sounds like a headache to me.
Yeah, well,
Yes,
Well-
so we do recommend when we have pre-apps, so we don't always have pre-apps for just Enrods, that the applicants do go before the Natural Resources Committee. They're not required to. We do inform them through this email and so forth. Our code requirement is just that it has native plants. It doesn't say specific plant species.
But we have
So
a
that's
list.
where we circulate it through, their consultant, as well as David Evans and Associates, our consultant, to make sure that those species are appropriate, but.
but we also have a list. So it's real easy to get the list and take a look to see what's,
So we verify that they picked off
Picked
the
the
list,
list.
and then the scientists will make sure that it's the right plant for the right spot.
so basically the deal is they submit, we have a 120-day time frame, and for some, so when the notice goes out to you or whoever, you've got basically 2 weeks maybe. Sometimes you get 2 weeks, like the notice says that there's a hearing, please submit your comments by X, which is usually a time frame before. So that's what you need to keep an eye out on, is what those time frames are. If you're not meeting, then they're not. I guess I would be concerned that they would hold up an application during a 120-day time frame. That's the big issue. It's all about timing. And
Well, it looks to me, based on the school district, that it basically came in during Thanksgiving. And-
what is the date it says
Well,
to submit by?
November 20th was when when
Notice
it went
went
out.
out, and
And it
it's
was
due-
submit by December 8th, which means
okay.
you were right in between your two meetings. So,
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean it's an open hearing, so you could still just come in and say, well, here's our submittal.
Well, I understand that.
So,
Yeah.
so I'm just saying, but yeah, if there's an opportunity, we should avail ourselves of your expertise. That's why we.
Oh, yeah.
But if there isn't.
Well, not my expertise, but the
Yeah, but the
committee's.
committee's expertise.
Yours
But again, if
is-
there's not, if you have a meeting and it's in between, I think you're gonna have, the onus is gonna have to be on the committee to get it circulated so that everybody can comment to you and then you can submit it to them, because,
Or have some sort of executive.
or,
group or
have
something.
a quickie special meeting, I don't know. So we have the
Well,
same.
I think we'll need to work with staff because I get all the
but-
applications coming in and I don't need them all.
I know, but you need, but see, it's easier for them to send them all out rather than to pick.
Pick and choose.
Because
Well, to the members of the committee, they could send the ones specifically that deal with natural
if
resource
it's got an
overlays,
NR.
period.
Yeah, I agree, but I get them all too, and I go through and, if it's
Yeah.
not within the purview of what we need to deal with, I don't look at it, but the ones that are, so they're kind of putting the onus on me to look at them and see whether this affects me or where I live. So it's kind of, like I said, it's a partnership, it's kind of a two-way street thing here.
Yeah, I know.
So,
Okay.
all right?
Point taken, though,
What we might-
we do want your input.
Yeah.
Yeah, I understand
So
that.
just, you'll have to be a little more, you'll have to read those more, which I know are so
Excuse me?
delightful.
Excuse me?
Yes, no, I mean,
No, are you suggesting I don't?
No, I'm just saying you'll just have to make sure that you see the ones, because sometimes
Yeah,
I'll
I
look-
understand that. I'm aware of
No,
that.
I'm
I
not
wouldn't
saying-
be here if I didn't see it.
I know, I'm not saying you didn't read them, but sometimes I read them, but you know how you read them, but you sort of go.
I wouldn't be here if I didn't read it.
I do. I'm just speaking for myself. I'm not speaking for you. I know that you read things and you're very thorough. So forgive me if you misunderstood what I was trying to say. Is there anything else for staff? We have no more slips or applicants? Okay. All right, then we will close the public hearing and have some deliberation.
Well, I think that the applicant has acted in good faith. I think everybody involved has acted in good faith. It's just one of those circumstances where something fell through the cracks, and not with evil intent. And I think the impact on the creek is minimal. I see no reason why not to support this, and I congratulate the applicant for coming forth in such a manner. And I think the staff report is very well done. Maybe a little overkill for the type of application we have before us, but I'm going to support this.
I's dotted, T's crossed.
Yeah, they're just being very thorough, because the NROD requirements are a little more robust than some of the other ones.
I will say that, it may be nitpicking, but I think that we're all conscious of the possibility of all of us polluting the ground with chemicals for our grass and things of this nature. Then when you introduce a nearby stream, it kind of raises an eyebrow, sort of, but I don't know how you control that, other than asking the applicant to be sensitive in those regards. But I think overall it's a job well done, and
Are you
thank
making that a
for your-
motion of some sort?
Pardon me?
Would you like to make that as a motion of some sort?
I never make motions. I just criticize.
Well, make this your first for 2018.
Well, I move that. What's the
NR
application number?
170010.
Yeah, like what he said.
You move it?
Yes, I so move that it be approved.
I second it.
Second, it's been moved and seconded.
Yeah.
Is there any further discussion? Okay.
Did you say with conditions?
Yes, because it does have conditions.
In the staff report.
Conditions, the staff report.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. Commissioner Henkin,
Aye.
Commissioner Johnson,
Aye.
Commissioner Maybe,
Aye.
Chair McGriff,
Aye.
Commissioner Espy,
Aye.
Commissioner Guile,
Aye.
and Commissioner Mahoney.
Aye.
You sure?
All right. Thank you so much. Thanks for coming in. Thank you for all your work.
And
Thank you, Tina.
I love your report, by the way. That's.
Let us know when the barbecue is.
Yes. All right, so let's quickly dispense with 4B and move, have a motion to continue planning file LE 1702.
Well, do you have anybody who wants to?
I don't think I have no slips and nobody's here.
Okay.
So February the 12th, and for Kelly's purposes, I will be here because I did participate in the McLaughlin-Kenema Trail Plan, and I was not here when it was discussed, although I said, did you want me to stay on the phone when that was the next item, and we disconnected ourselves, so I was calling in from Chicago for that. So is there a motion?
Sure. I'll move.
We're continuing item 4B. You have your agenda there?
Yes.
I move that we continue planning file LE 17-02 to February 12th, 2018.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, seconded by Mr. Johnson. We'll call the roll.
Commissioner Henkin,
Aye.
Commissioner Johnson,
Aye.
Commissioner Maybe,
Aye.
Chair McGriff,
Aye.
Commissioner Espy,
Aye.
Commissioner Guile,
I guess aye.
and Commissioner Mahoney.
Aye.
All right. John, come on up.
I was really enthused when I saw it was a pub work session, and then I realized, oh, it's a pub.
Can we postpone?
It's not a pub work
Postpone
session.
this part?
Thank you for that.
Okay, so we are now into our work session and
So,
close all the public hearings and we'll go to work session.
yeah, work session, great. So I don't know if you've met Dana Webb, but she's she's our project engineer. She's a senior project engineer. She's been with us a couple years now.
2.5.
As opposed to a junior project engineer.
Yeah, no, definitely a senior project engineer. She came to us from the city of Tualatin with many years of experience. So we're real happy to have her. And she's really been managing this project. Just because I didn't give her a lot of heads up about this, I said I'd take the lion's share of the presentation. We've been presenting this a couple of different times, so we're gonna bust through it as quickly as we
Okay, so
can.
before you go, I just wanted, so the reason that they are here, and I will say that I will take the hit for it, is that I asked John and Laura if John could come and present. We did, as those of you who were here, have a work session with the City Commission, and there were not too many questions by the Planning Commission at that particular time, and we had two of our members who were absent, and it's always, to me, better if we're together when we're discussing our favorite topic, which is transportation. And so John graciously said, do you really need to have works? And I said, please. So I was really grateful that you agreed and
So
would
we
come
better
and-
be really nice then, huh?
Well, aren't you guys always nice?
Well, it may become a pub work session.
Well, that, and as the chair pointed out, it is a fantastic topic, right?
And he's got pub stuff for us after the meeting.
So,
But anyway, thank you again, John, for agreeing to come. I know you.
Not a problem.
Everybody has
Not a
everything to do on
problem.
Monday nights.
we shortened it a little bit.
Yay.
So, mostly because most of you have heard it, and those of you that haven't, we also presented it to the Transportation Advisory Committee, and we even spent more time talking about there.
The chair of it was here, and I guess he just left, so that's okay. But we've got you.
I think it's temporary.
Oh, he's temporary? Okay, he's coming back.
See a jacket there.
I missed that.
Mr. LaSalle was sitting, he's a member
Oh,
of
okay.
the
Okay.
committee.
Yeah. So, yeah, we had a lot of discussion about it at the Transportation Advisory Committee. And at the end of the day, we got an affirmative vote from the commission to adopt the alternate mobility recommendations as presented. So I'll go through those just for some background.
Say that again, what you just said?
At the Transportation Advisory
Oh,
Committee.
transportation, okay. You got the go-ahead from them to move forward.
Yes.
Ah, okay, see, didn't hear the transportation part, I heard you say commission, and I thought, well, then why never mind. Just continue, sorry.
That's
I just
okay.
missed.
That's okay.
I just missed part of what you said.
There haven't been any public hearings.
No, I realize
We are
that.
only in work
Yes.
session, and there's not going to be a public hearing
Yes.
tonight on this
No,
matter.
I
This
totally
is just
understand.
a work session.
I understand. I just misunderstood what he said.
Our first work session is with you folks, and it's January 22nd. So I hope you get excited about that. We're excited about that. So a little bit of background. In 2013, the Transportation Advisory Committee determined that the Beaver Creek corridor was not going to meet the standards by which we measure congestion, most specifically at Beaver Creek in 213, as well as Redland Road and 213. So at that time, there was a decision that was made that if many of you have been here long enough to remember that at one point in time that was proposed as a grade separated interchange. And about the time, just before I started that, I remember coming to Oregon City and checking out Oregon City, and that intersection was under construction, and it was about done by the time I started. So that's been 14 years ago now. So it's been in its current configuration about 14 years. In our prior transportation system plan, there was this project that was identified, very loosely identified as this grade separated interchange. I think that at the time, the estimate for that was around 20 million. And at the time, when they made the decision to go with the configuration that we have today, they decided that there was all the stakeholders, the county, the state, and the city decided that they couldn't build the grade separated interchange for a variety of reasons. And we hashed through those in this study as well. So we've been kind of working with that scenario for some time now. And so one of the things that was a requirement, while we didn't include the grade separated interchange in our TSP, we included the requirement that we study the intersection. So ODOT held our feet to the fire on that. We're a little bit behind schedule on that. I think we were supposed to do it in a couple of years, and here we are in 2018 already and still trying to get through that approval process. So it's been kind of a long run, and it's, I think, long run for a good reason. It requires a fair amount of thought and consideration, and we think we put a lot of thought and consideration into this with the recommendation that we're bringing forward. So when we took on the effort to say, look, we need to complete this alternate mobility study, we decided to hire Kittleson and Associates. And well, I know you've all heard from consultants, and that one in particular, they're one of the region's, maybe the nation's best transportation engineers. So they've helped us with the technical side of things, as well as helped us through we've got 2 committees that I'll talk a little bit about. But we hired them to help facilitate the workshops, help facilitate and complete the technical analysis, and then really just kind of keep these advisory groups informed and have so that we'd have some productive work sessions. And I'm just trying to think, Zach, you weren't on I know Bob has been. Did we have a planning committee? We didn't have.
Bob was the.
Oh, yes, Damon. I'm sorry, Damon. I couldn't quite remember. It's been a while since we've had an advisory committee meeting. But, yeah, that's right. So Damon's been on that as well. So we had a community advisory group, which both Damon and Bob were on. And then we had a technical advisory group, which was mostly agency folks. So very, very good groups, well-informed, and hopefully even more informed now.
So what are the requirements that the state is asking to be done in order that they're pressing us for? As you're saying, we're a little bit behind, but they're being patient and saying, okay, you can have more time.
Okay, so complete the study, get it adopted, and then get it adopted through our local land use process.
What are ODOT specific requirements that we have to meet?
Oh, you mean what is the standard?
Yeah.
Let me get there.
Okay.
Okay.
I didn't know if it was something that says, okay, here's the sheet of paper, this is what you have to do, and you check everything off, and.
Okay, I'll try and go through that. We have a couple of slides with that. So, so at the time we were looking, when we defined our alternate mobility study, we targeted Beaver Creek in 213, and after realizing with the annexations that were facing us in the Holcomb area or the Park Place area, that we probably ought to include 213 as well. So Redland and 213 is also a part of this study. So we've had so far 6 advisory committee meetings, really 3 for each of the 3 groups, of the 2 groups. And we've looked at a variety of projects. Most of the project analysis was at Beaver Creek and 213. Redland Road, as I'll show you in a little bit, and 213 has got an existing project that was designed, and well, it's like probably 90% design for that came out of the Jug Handle project. So we couldn't afford to build the Redland Road intersection project when we did the Jug Handle project, so we got it through that far design, but we didn't actually build it. So that one's still identified, and we still plan to pursue that as funding allows. But we looked at a variety of different projects at Beaver Creek in 213. We looked at a variety of different ways to measure the standard, right? So part of this process was not only looking at our current standard, but looking at other ways of measuring the standard, how we measure congestion, right? Is there something different than what we do today? Which right now it's volume over capacity. So if you paid much attention to those traffic reports that are in your packets, for us now, the standard is volume over capacity. So we looked at that. We looked at a variety of safety improvements, and they're included in this study as well. And we looked at funding opportunities and constraints. We have both. We have some opportunities and we have some constraints. So, all right, so our outreach plan, I mentioned the advisory committee meetings. There's also been a variety of meetings with the state and just a lot of internal staff meetings. But from more recent time, we got the draft report is published. It's available online. That was on December 4th. We had the Joint Planning Commission City Commission meeting, which some of you were able to attend. That was on December 12th. That same day before the meeting, there was an open house that was I don't know if it was well attended, but it was open to the public, and I think we had a few people attend that. We had the Transportation Advisory Committee meeting, and again, I think we spent more time on that than the Joint Planning Commission and City Commission did, and a lot of discussion about that. And again, at the end of the day, we got a recommendation from them to go ahead and adopt the study as drafted. And then Laura has taken this to the development stakeholders meeting, the last one. I didn't attend that, but I think there were some people there that she was able to present that to. And then here we are back with you folks again. And I've got another slide that's going to talk a little bit more about what we're planning in the future, because there is at least one more advisory committee meeting, and we're hoping that's the community advisory committee that is coming up. So Chair McGriff, here's kind of the standard. So and Dana, chime in if I mess this up, because I've been known to. So right now we use volume over capacity. And if an intersection is completely at capacity, that value is 1, right? So you go above 1, it's a little hard to measure. It's more of a theoretical number, right? You're saying your cup is full. How much more can you fill it? Well, you really can't fill it over 1, but there are theoretical numbers. And so, again, Kittleson did the analysis on that and basically showed that at 2035, which is our build-out year, what would the intersection as is look like in terms of volume to capacity? So this table represents 2 scenarios. The top scenario is just Beaver Creek Road as it sits today. And then what we're showing in the columns to the right of that are the various highest hours of congestion in that intersection, and they measured 5 of those hours. So they took recent data. I guess that's another thing that I want to mention is we had a lot of old data, but because of this study, we collected a lot of new data, and we did that to help inform the modeling that much further. So for the peak hour, we found that was the hour with the most congestion, the most traffic moved through the intersection. Again, using today's numbers and extrapolating to full build out at 2035, we had a peak hour at 4 p.m. of 1.11. And that continued through the second hour really very close to the same thing in the third hour. The fourth highest hour was under the 1, but it was at 2 p.m. So that really that AM or that PM time frame when you might think it is right as school gets out through the home commute is when we saw the most congestion, and that intersection moved in theory the most traffic. There's a much more problematic time frame. It's much shorter, but in the morning, the 5th highest hour was at 7 a.m. And we see that for mostly the traffic that's trying to get from Beaver Creek onto Highway 213 northbound, right? So if you're coming from the high school, heading into Oregon City on Beaver Creek Road, you make that right turn onto 213, and that movement is really, out of all the hours, that's got
So they're trying to get
most
from
likelihood
213 to 205?
Well, from Beaver Creek to 205, yeah.
Yeah,
Down
from Beaver Creek to
205,
right,
okay.
right. There, I think the majority of those trips, their end result is 205.
205, okay.
John, am I missing something that it says 5th highest hour and it's at 1.34? Wouldn't that be the highest hour, not the 5th highest hour?
That is the highest hour, yeah.
Why is it called the 5th highest hour? Or these are just...
Yeah, let me think if I can.
So the hours, the 4 o'clock hour has the highest volume of vehicles in the intersection. So that 5th highest hour shows the 1.34 because that has the 5th highest volume of cars, but that AM movement from Beaver Creek to 213 northbound causes the intersection to fail.
So there's less vehicles moving through the intersection, but that one movement is really pretty bad.
Total vehicles are
Down, less.
But the amount of vehicles in that turn lane is crazy high.
Right.
What does this translate into? Maybe this is crazy, but so what does that mean in terms of number of vehicles that are cruising through there?
I don't know that we know the number of vehicles, but and 1.34, remember, is a theoretical
Right, I
number.
know, that's why I was trying to bring this down to something that's like, okay, is that 20 cars going through the intersection? Is that 15 cars? Is that 100 cars?
Yeah, there probably is a number. We didn't bring that for you, and we could share that via email.
Denise, I think it has to do with how long it takes to get through a light cycle.
No, I
And I think it
understand
has more to do with the light cycle, that timing, than it
Right.
does cars stacked up.
Yeah.
Right.
Some of the questions
Well,
I've
it's
asked
kind of
are people
both.
that have asked me. Believe me, they got the blue postcard, and I've been getting a lot of questions about it. And I said, come to the meeting. You can see that they're all here.
Yes.
Yeah. It really is. I think we see that as more, well, then are there, does that 7 to 8 a.m. hour, during that peak period of time, you have to sit through that signal 2 or 3 times, 4 times maybe to make it through the intersection. That's more a better measure than just how many vehicles, because how many vehicles is kind of relative because speed's involved. It's just, it's really about the number of times. And I think I remember hearing at worst during the study that it was like, having to sit through that intersection 3 or 4 times.
Well, see, those-
or having to sit through a cycle 3 or 4 times.
Well, both of those things make sense to me. So the cycle and number of cars. So, again, to me, it's sort of all interrelated. It's a different way, it's a different perspective that people who are not technical in this can maybe understand clearer, as opposed to, well, here's the ratio. They're going to see that and go, I don't really know what that means. So anyway,
Understood.
yeah, but thank you for trying to answer that.
Trying to answer that anyway. Didn't do
And you
a
said
great
you have
job.
some raw numbers, so you'll look up in your stuff and you'll tell us next time.
So, we'll definitely make sure we can address that.
And when you say
at
recent
the
data, are you saying like
May of 2017.
Yeah.
Awesome.
They put cameras up and counted every car for so many.
So the next line, or the next scenario, is Beaver Creek with a right turn merge lane. So out of all the various scenarios that we looked at, that, again, changing the existing right turn lane, which is really kind of a yield-controlled right turn lane, very short. You you can get into it just fine as you're coming, I guess it would be westbound on Beaver Creek Road. But then you pretty much have to yield, and any 213 traffic is gonna hold that back. So the improvement, and I'll show it to you, but the improvement was basically to make that free-flowing, have more of an acceleration lane, and give more opportunity for merging. And with that scenario, and some other small improvements, they were able to show that during these same hours, that again, we could meet the standard. There is one little caveat to that, though, and the standard that we would be meeting would be measured a little differently than what we measured today. So today we typically measure during the peak season, and this would be measured during an average season day. Okay, so we did that for the main reason was because what we heard from ODOT was that they thought that the OTC, Oregon Transportation Commission, was most interested in seeing a standard that measured at 1, not something greater than 1, because again, it's back to that cup full kind of scenario. If you're showing a standard that exceeds it. Now, Redland Road is another little caveat to that, but basically they like the idea of us having a standard that was still at 1, just picking a different time to measure it. So it's, I don't know, it was a scenario that seemed to make the most sense to us. And that's what gets us within the standard.
That sounds like we don't like the numbers, so pick different ones. I mean,
I wouldn't say we don't like it. I guess it's just trying to recognize. I mean, I think what everybody's recognized is we're between a rock and a hard place on this intersection.
I don't deny that. It's just the way you said that the state is the state doesn't want to recognize that there are bad intersections. So let's pick different times so that they're not bad when we pick them.
Let's change the model.
Yeah, I mean,
Change the paradigm.
and you know, irrespective of that, this is an average day. I mean, the only season is whether or not it's summer, but there's so many events going on at the school that, you know, the sporting and the training camps and all that, it's probably still just as busy.
Yeah, I think,
you know, even when school's not in session, so.
Yeah. I don't know how big the difference is, but I think in this case, it makes a lot of sense for us to be able to do that. It also helps us with development review and the analysis in the future, right? So that when we actually ask the transportation engineers to analyze it, we're analyzing it against a 1.0 versus a 1.25 or something like that, right?
Do you recall when Chief Band was asked the question about the intersection? There's obviously from what I recall him saying, there's definitely a correlation between the failure and the number of accidents that we have there. And I think he was specifically asked that question by one of the commissioners. Not the planning commissioners, but the city commissioners.
Yeah, I think there was a question about red light cameras and whether or not that would help.
Yeah, and then he talked about the accident rate at that particular intersection. And
Pretty
obviously,
high.
it's obviously our desire to try to minimize that by adding the proposed transportation improvement, because hopefully that will cut down on, you know, whatever. I don't know if those are rear enders or whatever. Jim didn't get real specific, but
He did say that the vast majority were front and rear enders versus T-bone. Like if somebody's running the light and, you know, getting caught, it's somebody who chose not to run the light, which was what the red light camera is. You see an increase in those because people change their minds suddenly after they initially chose to bolt.
And again, the study looked real hard at those numbers.
Yeah.
It was more than, I mean, Jim's depiction isn't much different than what we heard from the consultant in their safety analysis. It was just, I think the way it was presented started with the red light camera.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I think we acknowledge after learning some things about red light cameras that they tend to result in a fair amount of rear enders, and at this intersection, that's predominantly what we're seeing already. So,
excuse me, John, I want to mention something before you move on. I was there the night it happened, and I would be remiss if I didn't mention it, because I think it's an example of public input. And I don't know what you call it, that white line there where you show the acceleration lane. That was mentioned by Damon. I remember that night.
You're talking about the work session?
That was,
Okay.
it was way back when Damon mentioned that. And I'm glad to see that it's
Right, we were part of
incorporated.
TAC, okay.
You know, it's something that was feasible and could be done.
That's right.
And
Yeah,
I remember the night he mentioned that. And thank you for implementing that.
we haven't built it yet, but we're good.
Well, okay, and the other thing I want to say, and I'm sounding like a broken record, is the rock and the hard spot is money. We can engineer ourselves out of some improvements, and we can lower our, or we can address these standards if we have a strategy for raising the money, either at the state level, the federal level, or a combination thereof, with the city participating, and we can make these adjustments. But this is just piecemeal, and it's patchwork. You know it, and I know it. And there's nothing against the engineers. You know, they're up against the rock and hard spot too. They can make all kinds of plans and show us how we can get out of this mess. But then we just stop when it comes to financing it. You know, and then we start moving around the modeling and the standards and manipulating and making it show something that it really isn't. And it's a little frustrating from this chair where I sit. But I wanted to mention these two things so that, you know, at least I say it again in public.
But you said also at that time, if the city had started putting away a little bit of money back when we knew that there was going to be a problem here, we'd probably have some of it and be able to maybe get ODOT funding. It's just, my recollection of this from 20 years ago was that we said that same thing, that we can't afford it. And it's like, well, we cannot not afford it.
This is just an accident of geography. It happens to be in the city, therefore it's a city plan. And it's really, we're asked to address a regional plan. We're a community asked to address a regional plan with our limited resources. And it's not real. We're kidding ourselves.
And I'm just hoping that we have things in place if and when we do have the funding available, that we do all the studies that we need to do and all the, you know, come up with all of the components that we can put into place if and when the funding becomes available, we can more easily do it instead of spending the majority of the money that we get on studies.
Well, and it makes me, I mean, we're fixated on that one side of the equation. You know, we need to raise X million dollars, which is really hard to obtain, but we don't ever focus on what we're missing. So I'm wondering,
what are we missing?
assuming what the need is has there ever been an economic development study on what this constraint is causing for the region? Because if we say that economic constraint is $200 million, then yeah, we can invest $5 million. It's a really easy argument to make.
I think we could easily figure out what it economically, how it is going to how it is and continues to constrain Oregon City. I don't think the rest of the region has really looked at it from that standpoint, because I think you said it, that, you know, we're not 217 and I-5. If we were 217 and I-5, we'd be getting a little more attention and get some more money put into this. But, you know, again, as you so aptly stated several months ago, was that the majority of the traffic that is coming through this intersection is not generated in Oregon City. It's generated elsewhere. So therefore, how do we, you know, without doing a toll or some kind of other crazy thing, how do we get the other jurisdiction, which is our partner Clackamas County, to help us pay for this, which is where the traffic is coming from? And that's in you know, in any scenario that I could come up with, that ain't gonna happen.
Well, I know the Clackamas Economic Development Commission has spent a lot of time on traffic and transportation, and it's a complicated issue because you're talking exports, and instead of sending trucks to the port, they're going to Seattle, and regardless of how it's looked at, it's not going to be easy.
But the economic impact is already severe.
Yeah.
I've heard people at Benchmade talk about trying to get their trucks in here because they go through that intersection. I certainly don't want them to be using 7th and Malala and Lynn Avenue to get their trucks up here, because that's going to cause another problem.
All good points. I guess I just continue to look at this intersection compared to other intersections in the metro region and wonder, how bad, to me, using this at all hours, different hours of the day, doesn't quite seem like the problem we're seeing in a lot of the metro region and other locations around the metro region. If you've spent any time in Beaverton at all, Sherwood, for that matter. Have you spent any time in Sherwood and 99E and any of those cross?
I'm always going the other direction. I'm not coming back.
Okay, 82nd and 205. I mean, I get it. It's for Oregon City. It's different. It's it is the most congested, but still not.
I still want to know why we end up with that crazy slowdown on the Wilsonville bridges. Why does it back up for 5 miles? And it's the same amount of lanes before and after.
No, I want to know about the black hole at Stafford.
All right, so I'm taking way longer than I planned. This was a short presentation.
Let's move along.
So, look, even Terry's leaving.
We are just an inquisitive bunch.
Okay, so this is the project that really is coming out of the alternate mobility study. It's really that the acceleration lane and through right turn lane, and it's a $2.6 million project. There's also...
It's where the little arrows are?
Right.
Because I know you've got the pointer, but...
I know, but then you have to turn around.
I know, well, I don't mind.
So it's this through...
That right there, yeah.
Yeah.
You should see how squished it is on here. It's just very squished.
Yeah.
How much did you say, John?
2.6 million. And we've included that in our transportation project list, that 2.6 million.
Oh.
So it's something that the City Commission is going to be taking on the topic of SDC, transportation SDCs next month in a public hearing. And so, these kinds of projects tend to push that number higher and higher.
2.6 million just for that one little location? I could go up and paint the white lines for you.
Is that any contribution from the county or the state?
No, at this point,
it's all us?
It's all us.
Yeah. Okay, we're going to start putting cans out at grocery stores and toll on the highway there.
So quickly, Redland Road. Redland Road is in our regional center. Intersections within the regional center have a slightly different alternate mobility standard, and they raise it by 0.1. So again, it's basically an acknowledgement that because it's in that regional center, it's going to be more congestion. Maybe that's why we have more congestion in at 205 and some of the other regional centers around Sunnyside, those kind of areas. But so anyway, that's the standard for that intersection. So we again measured at that intersection, and the bottom line out of this one is we're able to stay within the standard. I'm trying to remember this one here. Let's see. We've got a project identified that we're collecting some money for in our transportation system plan. So I think we listed this is a $10 million project, this Redland Road project, and it's really adding a third lane in each direction on 213. And it takes it really from where it goes to 2 lanes to the Holcomb Bridge, essentially, and I'll show you a picture of that. But the one thing that the Transportation Commission wanted us to do here was they wanted, since we had numbers like this, we bumped them a little bit to provide some growth, but they wanted them to stair step. They wanted us to stair step them. So I think that 1.1, 1.9, and 1.04 is that what we're landing on for a standard?
We're asking for the first and second hours at 1.1 and the third hour at 1.05.
John?
So a little bit of
Do you understand
room.
that, Tom?
No, because I come through there all the time, and now I'm expecting 1,400 homes and all the other homes up there. How can they say, if this is 2035 numbers, that all that growth, have you seen the airstrip lately in the Sears Farm area and the 1,400 homes? It's Holcomb itself coming down around that steep curve is going to be a mess with all that home because there's still a lot of traffic now. It backs up, let alone Redland being only 2 lanes until it gets to that point. everybody I talk to about Redland, I get so many people in my store from Redland, I just say to them, good luck to us. Because how are they gonna get out of Redland on just 2 lanes coming to that intersection of Redland and Abernathy and Holcomb? How can this be? I mean, it's bad now.
So it's, we did a pretty good presentation to the TAC, or I did on that, and Dana helped me with that, and Bob was there as well. We brought in your whole neighborhood, and you weren't there, Tom. I mean, I think, how many did we have in the room? It was packed.
Well, I heard about it.
It actually was not packed, but we put a special effort into trying to talk about that issue. And I encourage you to look at that, because it didn't, I think when we have problems at Redland and 213, it's when we have problems on 205.
It's not Redland 213, I'm talking about the Redland, Abernathy, and Holcomb Boulevard coming together right there, and everybody trying to funnel up. It backs all the way down from 213 down to that intersection, because there's so much coming in from, I hope Bob talked about that in the meeting. I missed it, I couldn't make it, but I heard about it later from all the emails in our neighborhood.
So we recorded that meeting. I mean, I had a fair amount of graphics. I spent a lot of time trying to figure out what the problem was there. We either end up with signalization timing problems there, or we end up with backups from 205. Other than that, at least the times when I was out there, there was
In the
very
mornings
little
and the
traffic.
evenings, but mainly I'm thinking about all this growth that's coming that way. We can't block the annexations anymore, so it's gonna come down.
Right now, the models aren't suggesting
Nobody's
wow,
gonna be able to
that's
do
such a
anything
problem.
until,
It's time for me to move to Estacada.
you wanna drive from Estacada to here? I can tell you
No,
that's
I'll never come
fraught
back
with
there
some,
once I move to Estacada.
that's fraught with some problems too. I mean,
I'll let Bob drive it.
That's what causes all the traffic.
yeah, it's you driving to Estacada.
People moving to the outlying communities and bring traffic.
So, again, these aren't that's not necessarily the standard. It was 1.1, 1.1, 1.05. Is that right? Okay. And again, we have a $10 million project at Redland and 213, which adds, again, adds a through lane in each direction on 213. And while we don't know where all that money is going to come from, we're actually including 30% of that in our transportation system charge. So we're trying to set aside that money a little bit so that we can hopefully at some point in the future have our partners like Clackamas County or the state, probably more likely the state, maybe the feds, do something similar to what we've done on the Jug Handle project and fund that project. But right now we don't know that number, so we're just collecting money or we're proposing to collect money for our 30%.
So you're not gonna build my roundabout at Redland?
So, John, one quick question. I had heard rumors, and obviously rumors are just what they are, that they were thinking of taking that Holcomb Boulevard, and rather than going around that sharp corner there, of doing a right-hand lane that would merge onto 213. Was there any talk or discussion on that? You know what I'm talking about? As you come down Holcomb, you got that sharp, I heard they were gonna maybe put
So some have suggested before you cross over the Holcomb Bridge, you would peel that off and merge somewhere
onto 213 that way, which would eliminate the backup up Holcomb.
Yeah, so there wasn't analysis done on that. I've heard that. We heard it at the Transportation Advisory Committee as well. I know that's kind of a neighborhood rumor. You know, again, the traffic numbers don't really support that kind of an investment.
Boy, it's going to get, never mind.
Yeah, I mean, we did talk about it in our committee, was the idea of having a 213 up to Holcomb and then an off Holcomb down to, but then it becomes, well, what about the other direction? And then it becomes a, whole 4-lane
You kind of got a cliff, you got a cliff there.
And you've got to, build the on-ramps and the run-outs, and then you're already looking at expanding lanes, so it's,
And again, I just think you got to look back at what's really going on there. And I know there's this impression, but our traffic numbers don't show it.
Perception.
Yeah, the perception has been, since I've been there for 14 years, it's been getting worse and worse.
Yeah, I mean,
now with all the construction.
Traffic has increased on Holcomb. Speeds, not so much. So it's still a safe corridor.
I still go 60.
There were definitely some, the Transportation Advisory Committee made some good points about better pedestrian connectivity on Holcomb. I would agree with that. There's lots of room for improvement for pedestrian activity on Holcomb.
But the talk has always been, when I've heard everybody, you can't widen Holcomb because of all the homes, like Jackie's home and everybody else's, it's tight all the way through there. The only solution
Well,
was
it
at the
depends
base.
on where the right-of-way is.
Yeah.
It's like we talked about Holly Lane, where the right-of-way is and where people see the roadway are two different places. So the right-of-way for Holcomb Boulevard may not be built out except where the side curbs and sidewalks are, but the rest of it, their house may be really close to the right-of-way.
Jackie's.
So, I mean, that's not anybody's fault, but that's just where it is.
They were there since before we all.
What about
Are you guys ready to continue?
What about
Sorry.
the right-of-way on Redland? Would the improvement you're talking about require right-of-way dedication, or did the right-of-way's already there? It just isn't built out?
My recollect is most of Redland's built out, and we have, if it's
Yeah.
not, we have the right of way.
The
We'd have to
project,
acquire right-of-way?
no,
Don't we
all
have
the
it?
right-of-ways was acquired as part of the phase
Oh,
one.
we already have it. It just isn't built out to,
Yeah, for the improvements that were
Proposed.
not for the Holcomb on-ramp, but
Right.
yeah. So for recommendations, the Transportation Advisory Committee adopted this, and we're hoping the Planning Commission will as well. Adopt an alternate mobility target with a VC of 1 for 3 hours per day annual average conditions. So again, that's accepting V over C for a longer period of time than what the current standards, and also measuring it during annual average conditions, not season, peak, yeah, season average day. And then add several projects into the TSP. We've got some sidewalk infill projects as well as that right turn lane. And then for OR 213, similar, adopt a different alternate mobility target. And then we went above and beyond and went ahead and included the project, at least 30% of it, in our transportation project list. That's the added project at Beaver Creek. So there's some safety improvements through the intersection as well, possibly looking at the turn lanes and turn lane storage for Maple Lane. And then there's a section of sidewalk that we're showing near Marjorie Lane there. It's on the other side, but there's a subdivision there, Coltrane, that needs some sidewalk. There's a pedestrian access to the neighborhood there, so try and get that completed as well. So next steps, we decided to have yet another community advisory group meeting, so I'm hoping folks can make that. That's January 11th. We've got the Planning Commission hearing on the 22nd. We've scheduled to go to the City Commission for a public hearing on the 7th. And once we get it through our legislative approval process, then it needs to go to the Oregon Transportation Commission. And we understand for our region, we're one of the first. We are the first to take an alternate mobility standard change to the OTC. So once again, Oregon City's going to be one of the firsts, or have another first. And we've been talking to ODOT quite a bit about what we think that the Transportation Commission will approve, and we're as confident as we can be that they'll approve this recommendation.
Cool.
well, the first one in always has the best opportunity.
Right. I got a couple of things. I'm just hoping that if, when we do adopt this plan, that we don't just close the door on doing other kinds of improvements that are meaningful to this intersection to clear it up. And then also, this is my pipe dream, is to have like a safe route to Oregon City High. And instead of having a bike lane in the actual roadway where it can happen, where it's possible, have a two-way bike lane and have a certain amount of buffer, like a meaningful amount of buffer, like 20, 30 feet, like they have in Corvallis, a bike lane and a walking lane that allows people, high school students, to ride their bikes to school from that intersection all the way through. I know you could do it like on the college property. Maybe you could acquire right away from some of the private property owners. Some places it's impossible. You'd have to probably go out to the street, but I think that would be a really cool, really great alternative transportation mode that would be meaningful and safe for kids going to the high school.
I agree.
Okay, for whatever that's worth.
Yeah.
I will say that it either needs to be a dedicated, like 20 feet plus off.
Right.
But if it does the weavy in and out, then they're just gonna walk down the street. I mean, I see that already at the high school, because there is a section that is paved and it's off the, off the road. And
don't walk
because they have to, it's one of those, kind of slightly
Meandering,
weavy, they just walk right down the road.
Straight through.
Because it's shortest path, and
We need
that's
to
what
make
they're
them walk
taking.
in the path.
Well, a good living example is the trolley trail in Milwaukee. So do you take that or do you ride on 99?
Yeah.
I'd rather take the trolley train.
Yeah,
So, John, just because you have this one up, and this is very telling, so what I'm looking at is, on the upper portion there of Beaver Creek Road, yeah, right there, so where we're having the backup problems is when people are there, and then are they making that turn onto 213 at that, right where you have the dot going? That's where we have issues, that's what I was, visually, yeah,
That's the worst.
That's the worst, yeah.
I mean, in the AM, that's
Yeah.
that's the AM.
AM, yeah.
In the PM, it's really these two
It's that,
lanes
yeah.
and these two lanes.
Yeah, that's what I was, and so we don't have any issues on this side where they're going that way or going
Yeah,
back
that's
towards.
pretty free flowing.
Free flowing, okay.
This movement's pretty free flowing. This movement's pretty free flowing. This movement's pretty free flowing. It's really just in the PM, it's these two lanes and these two lanes. And in the AM, it's really that movement right there.
Where are you at about getting rid of that second turn lane to add a kind of a third queue lane into the?
So that's, that needs some analysis. We'll probably look at that pretty hard when we look at future development out there, but it's not part of the alternate mobility study necessarily. It's just been something that Kittleson has said that looks like it would work. We didn't do the traffic analysis for Maple Lane, so we feel pretty confident that the demand for this movement here, so from Beaver Creek, making that left turn onto 213 southbound is light enough to where it might be that there's two lanes right there that do that right
So
now.
so
You could eliminate one of them and give that to the turning traffic that's coming off Beaver Creek and turning towards Maple
Could you
Lane.
go back to where you had it on the arrow? So what I can make out on the aerial is there's two arrows. If you want to
There's
go
two straights and two turns.
Yeah, so you're going, you can make, so you've got two lanes that can turn onto 213 going, I don't know what.
That way.
Yeah, going towards Molalla.
Yeah.
So on the other side there, is that arrow curved there on the next lane over towards
Right here?
so go up further.
The third.
Yeah, right there. Is that a curved line that's?
No,
Is- or-
those are just worn.
Or is it just distorted that I can't tell? So those are both straight lanes. Those are going straight. And the only one that allows you to turn is the one
Right.
closest to the shrubbery there.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what because from here, I'm looking at it, it looks like it's doing this, and I'm thinking, oh my God, I think I can't.
No, I think
I didn't
it's
remember
more.
people were doing that. That would be really dangerous, but okay. Yeah, because I'm looking at even on this, it doesn't look straight. It looks like it's got kind of a wow in it. Okay. So on that one little chart that you showed on Redland, the same way you showed kind of existing and then what the standard would be. So you're saying that's the scenario, so what is it currently? Because you had the two charts on 213, but this one only has one.
Yeah, this one is current as, well, it's not current, it's current it's the modeled rate with no changes.
Okay.
For 2035 build out.
So what is it now? Like, what's the existing? Like, you had the other one, you had this is what's going on now with the numbers, and then here's what it is
Yeah,
once
but
we fix it?
those were still build out numbers.
Yeah.
Okay.
There was nothing we didn't show any numbers that's today.
Okay.
Or May of 2017. We didn't show all these are projections for build out.
So are you going to show what sort of I'm looking at it sort of simplifying it before and the after.
Well, so the draft report has a lot of that information. I can't remember.
Okay.
I think it's got the.
I just need to know where to look
I think it's got
for it if I'm
existing
looking for it.
information in it.
Yeah, I think maybe the confusion is at 213 and Beaver Creek, we showed the scenario without the right turn, free flow,
Yeah.
and with the right turn. So we're showing that if we weren't proposing this project, which we're committing to funding,
Right.
then we would need to ask for many more hours of congestion.
And so on Redland Road, you're not showing the same sort of. No. Because I'm trying to compare apples to apples. So you're saying this is what's happening over here on Beaver Creek. So is the same equivalent, maybe not the same numbers, but is there an equivalent analysis that was done on Redland? Because I can understand what you're trying to do on Beaver Creek. With only seeing this one set of numbers, I'm still having a little hard time.
So the other comparable
digesting.
scenario would be Redland Road with the 2 new through lanes.
Right.
And I'm guessing
And
they've done that analysis.
Yeah. And if we could afford to build the $10 million project, we would not need alternate mobility targets at this intersection.
Yeah, I think it goes under.
But because we can't show funding on our own to afford that, then we have to ask for the alternate mobility targets.
Okay, all right. That, maybe there should be like a little star next to that going, okay, this is why we're not doing that same level of analysis because of this.
Yeah, we could include an analysis with that. It's just that project is not certain because we haven't. So for the OTC, we can share with them that project's out there, but there's no funding identified for the other. We're collecting 30%, but the other.
What I'm thinking is maybe just a
70.
little footnote saying this is kind of what's happening, but yeah, okay. Questions?
Impact due to lack of funding.
John, correct me if I'm wrong, but if we do adopt the city commission, the study, did I hear you say at the TAC meeting that there might be some implications here regarding the limitation of the issuance of building permits if we don't correct these problems? Was that incorporated into the presentation?
No, it should be.
Mentioned?
I saw it in the study. At the very executive summary, we said they wouldn't be able to.
Right now, and maybe Laura can address this, but right now, we have to adopt the alternate mobility study. From what I understand, we have to adopt, and the OTC has to adopt the alternate mobility studies before we can adopt new zoning out there.
Right.
Yeah, or implement them.
Right.
We can't adopt any new zoning.
Yeah.
So what Bob was referring to, was that like, I remember the Sears Farm, when that came up for annexation, they couldn't move forward because they had to wait for the mobility standards to be brought up for Redland and 230. Is that what we're referring to?
Well, that among other things.
I see.
Remember when we did the plan amendment and zone change for historic properties a couple years ago? We had to do a trip cap.
Yeah.
Because we don't have any more capacity in the intersection to accommodate any more traffic, and that's why they had to do a trip cap. And so we would be looking at trip caps at the existing county zoning for all of the annexation areas and all of the area that is within the urban growth boundary in order to allow that to develop, which wouldn't make any sense because we'd never get to urban densities.
Right.
So we have to do this in order to increase the capacity or increase the number of cars we can let through this intersection, even though we don't have capacity.
And remember, you asked the question about, well, you asked this follow-up question at that meeting, then what is the hurry to annex now when you know you can't do any development? And it was sort of went into the ether.
So that's what I was asking, if what Bob was asking, does that mean, like with these standards here for the Redland area, that development can't continue right now, or it can continue with these kind of, they were waiting for mobility standards to happen.
Development, I mean, according to these numbers, development can happen in that area.
It can.
Well, these numbers show that it's not that bad at that location. Now, we're still, because we're up and over, we're still asking for an alternate mobility standard for this intersection. It'll be part of the overall plan.
Okay.
And I think there's not much different than with, even though to me the alternate mobility standards that we're asking for ODOT they're quite different between the two intersections. This one's not, we're barely having to ask for an alternate mobility standard. Does that make sense? Maybe that's a better way of saying it. For Redland and 213, we just meet the threshold we just go over the threshold. So because of that, yes, we still have to ask for the alternate mobility. Beaver Creek, we go over quite a bit. So that's a bigger ask. And in fact, it's going to be more likely congested more often at Beaver Creek and 213 than here. Now, we still, though, have, for both cases, right, we would still be limited even if we didn't have an alternate mobility for Redland Road and 213. Then they would also be limited like they are on Beaver Creek. Is that correct?
If they exceed the volume to capacity, the annexation does not exceed the volume to capacity. That is just bringing land in. That doesn't add trips. It's the zone change and the development that follow. It's the development that brings the trips. It's the development that causes the congestion. So the annexation is not a problem. It's the zone change that then in turn authorizes development that is the problem, and that's why our code 1204 does not allow any zone changes to occur until the city adopts alternative mobility measures, and that's why we're in this suit.
So any projects that are already zoned, right?
Can go forward.
They can go forward, right? It's those that require a zone change because they're still the county.
Because we knew that Beaver Creek in 213 was going to be at capacity over the planning horizon when we adopted our TSP in 2014. 13.
It's two more things to add to that. So when we adopted it, we had this legal obligation to come back and answer this question. So all we knew is that we can't make Beaver Creek in 213 work. We need to come up with a solution. And so there's some legal obligations to fix the solution. And then also, we are just letting permitted uses come in with development. We don't know that there's this $2 million or whatever these improvements cost. And so we're not charging developers a proportionate share of those improvements because we didn't know what they are. And so at the moment, we're just letting permitted uses come on in and not pay much of an impact fee because we didn't know what fee they were paying for because we didn't know what the public improvements are. So there is some desire to, one, get it done because we're legally obligated to, and we said we would when we adopted our TSP, but two, come up with the solutions, get them on the books so that we can start to implement them and get them built.
So to clarify, because if I pass this information along, I want to be correct. So right now, if someone in any of those new annexation areas along Holcomb would come in and say, okay, we want to re-rate it or rezone it down to R8s or R6, we would not be able to do that based on this information? Or is that something that
Until this project is sorted out, if you do any development that puts more than 20 trips through an intersection and it's an increase, so a zone change or something like that, you can't do it.
What kind of trips? Peak hour?
Yeah.
Is lot averaging in this area because of this?
Oh dear,
That's a different,
We're gonna get that.
issue.
Okay.
Yes.
I just wanted to make sure I'm clear when I tell everybody about this.
It's when you go to increase the development potential on properties from what's already allowed.
And it's and 20 trips is the threshold. So if you're not bringing 20 trips through this intersection, then it wouldn't apply.
Yeah.
So just in summary, because you've done a really good job, and because we have fans far and wide, the postcard, everybody in town received a postcard. And I can tell you, got hit up yesterday and Fred Meyer, what's the blue postcard I got in the mail? And so I'm trying to explain it to them. So I'm wondering if you would just very simply explain it for
I can explain it.
Our folks out in TV land.
We're taking those calls.
Yes.
So yeah, we did send out more than 11,000 of those, not just everyone in town, but everyone in our urban growth boundary as well. And
I only saw people in town, so.
Yeah. So they had some kind of small font with a lot of legal language. A lot of that legal language is required, so I
Absolutely.
apologize. We try and be as clear as we can.
Don't apologize. I told him that's
They're
the law.
horrible.
What it did have, though, was a link to a website where we can explain things and translate that into non-legal language. And so please, for anyone
told
on the
them
video, 503-722-3789
I told them that
is our
too. They
phone number.
still just give the Cliff Notes version.
But you can also go on our website and take a look at it. There were two things that were noticed on the postcard. One was this project, and we have had a fair number of calls. I would have to say not as many calls as I remember us last time, the time before that, sending out this many postcards. So hopefully that means we're doing something right on the website. And then once we do explain it, it seems to be well understood and received. The other thing that we put on the postcard was a notification for code changes that I'll talk to you about next time or the time after.
Well,
next time.
I can tell you that it was a thrill a minute when I'm explaining about alternative mobility standards standing in Fred Meyer, and I could just see the person just glazing over.
The Cliff Notes is, we're hoping to make it fewer red lights that they have to sit through before they can turn.
I explained about
That's the Cliff Notes version.
213 and Beaver Creek Road, and I said, you know, this is involving how to make that work better, and there's a website, look at the website. So
We're obligated
anyway,
to come up with a long-term solution.
But thank
This is
you.
what it is.
So it's out there in TV land now.
Yeah.
Are there any further questions for John? Now, Bob, you know this is not a public hearing,
But if you want to talk, you can.
so it's up to these guys. I'm fine if you want to come up and say a few words if they're done.
On this subject?
Yes.
No, not on this subject, on communications.
Okay.
Oh, 6, yeah.
Yeah, okay, all right. Thank you so much. Oh, wait. He said don't.
Real quick, Dana, when is the meeting on the 11th?
Got it.
6 p.m.
Okay. I may have a conflict, but
Is it on your-
if so, I'll
Is it on your
email you
dance
guys.
card?
I got the email, like just before Christmas, and it's like, my brain isn't processing.
Thanks, you guys.
Your brain was on the holiday.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, on to our Planning Commission goals. Did everybody have a chance to look at the list that Laura so kindly sent out?
And then also was kind enough to reprint, so
Yes.
which is better.
Thank you. I'll bring them up on the
Yeah,
computer.
so I think we want to hone tonight. Would you like some water?
No, I'm okay. I'm just coughing over that last study.
Okay, well, maybe you can, please feel free to just get up and get some.
I needed something stronger.
I know, but we don't have that, and
Sorry, I got the last Dr. Pepper.
there is no pub in the public.
I aspirated a corn chip on the way home from work.
Oh my God, that's horrible. That could cause a choking hazard. Luckily, you have a steering
I know, I
wheel.
thought I was gonna
You could do
die.
the Heimlich in your own car with your steering wheel.
Yeah, just run into a tree.
Yeah, let the airbag do it.
All right. Well,
Sorry. Oh, she changed chairs.
I did, sorry.
serious.
I wanted to get on the computer so we could put that on the screen behind you. So we have met twice now, I think, to talk about goals. As a recap, Planning Commission has done goals intermittently, but not for a while. And so there's interested in coming up with goals. We sort of we had a brainstorming session, wrote down everything on the brainstorming session. They're showing up here. They were in the agenda packet as well. Above those goals, we put the City Commission goals. As you know, City Commission sets goals and associated with our budget, which runs on a biennium, which started last summer and then goes for 2 years. And so I listed all these things here just to provide references for all the things that we're doing in the Planning Division already to move forward the City Commission goals. And so you have that for a reference as well. We would recommend that you put the goals together again in that same time frame within the budget biennium. I'm here to answer any questions. I do have concerns. Obviously, if you list everything on the list, then I could guarantee we're not going to accomplish it. So just making sure that we have
It's a list.
accomplished all of
We're
those
entering
items.
all of our extra cash into Powerball so that when Planning Commission as a group wins, we will give you most of the money and you can hire more staff and you can have your own building. A better building, not a remodeled building.
And we'll name it after you.
A fabulous building.
We'll name it after you. It'll be the Turway Building.
Oh, I know it. Oh.
Turway Tower.
No, it's the staff and dedicated staff that has done you well,
Absolutely.
which I think is really good. I mean, we don't have, as a summary, we have 5 planners here. 1 is on a 1-year duration. And so we'll have 4 planners, really. And I think they accomplished a lot. Next time we post the agenda, I hope to put out our summary and statistics of what we've been working on in 2017, and so you get a sense of what that is. But we do accomplish a lot. That means people expect a lot of us, so just acknowledge there's still only 5 of us. But on here, we talked about last time, some dedicated work session or some time here to really talk about ways to have meaningful input into the next budget cycle. And then we worded it when we were having our hearing a little bit. I reworded it a little bit to make it more clear. So let me know if there's anything we can change. On the list is how to communicate well with City Commission. How we had talked about how often we communicate with City Commission and how that works. When we have my communications later, I will remind the group that Planning Commission has a yearly update, and it's going to be soon, and we'll talk about that in a moment.
That's why we need to hone it down.
Yeah. And then amending lot averaging and code language, the City Commission, since we met last, the City Commission directed us to go ahead and make some code amendments, and so we're in that process. And some amendments to lot averaging are in the legislative code amendment file that was noticed on that little blue card that was sent out. So we do have some language, and that's already in the queue right now. I'm here to answer any questions you have. Again, I would like to support the Planning Commission as best as we can, but acknowledge that we are overwhelmed with development applications and appeals and court and things that we cannot control at the moment.
So tell people stop applying right now. Okay, guys, so can we sort of start honing this list down? Does everybody have like their top 4 or 5 that we can say, okay, we've got a first tier thing that we really want to get to, and then we can hone that down some more, and then we have a second tier that if we get something else, then we could shift something up? Who wants to start?
Number 1 for me is amending lot averaging code, and the second is the regulations to prohibit clear cutting trees prior to development.
Okay.
I figure that communications is going to happen, and that doesn't going to take up a lot of our time to say, okay, we need to talk to them more often.
Okay, well, let's just go down and number these bullet points so that we know
That's just
which
me.
number we're talking about. So we've got 11 things on here, so you've got number 3 and number 6. Does that make sense?
Sorry.
That's okay.
Switched them all.
That's all right.
If you want to use those.
That's fine, we'll just use these numbers.
Okay, so you've got number 21 and number 24.
24,
okay.
those are.
I'm going to highlight them.
So who wants to go next? Vern?
Well, I would look at 20, I guess. Identify communication avenues as City Commission.
You only have 1?
At this time, yeah.
Okay, because I've just asked you guys 3 to 5, you know.
Right, you just asked, so that's all he's got.
Okay, all right. Damon?
I like 22, because I think it's actually, I mean, I know it's legislatively not as easy as it seems, but it seems like it's a small thing as opposed to rewriting the entire NROD. And 21. And 23, I would just say we have avoid ponding in basements, and I would put, slash against foundations.
Well, standards, the stormwater standards to see.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think with stormwater standards, period, not just.
Because I want to look at detention ponds and all sorts of other things.
Let's take out avoiding ponding in basements, just say stormwater standards.
Okay, and I would say that I was here when you guys were talking about that, but we would like to explore more what happened, why, and if it is the problem of the stormwater standards, right? Because we had development that was being built, which is different than what the effects are of development when it's built, when it was midway through the stream of construction. So I I don't want to place the blame that we had bad stormwater standards, which is what happened, when there were other things like we had the most rainfall that we've ever had, and the development wasn't done, and, you know.
22 and 23.
No, I think we want an answer to some of the testimony that we got.
Yeah, that was.
So we can
you had that.
figure out what the problem is
How to
before we fix the
articulate
problem? Yeah, okay. So, do you want me to say, look at stormwater standards, or understand how our stormwater standards?
How about explore improving stormwater standards?
And then in parentheses, yeah, something.
Okay, and that, just so you know, planning doesn't do that. Development our Public Works does that, and they just did that.
Yeah, I mean, I
So-
just want to hear the justification for the 15-year stormwater period instead of, or 15-year storm event instead of looking at like a 20-year or a 30-year or something like that.
Do you want me to
Why are we still in this time of climate change and increasing precipitation, yearly precipitation, why are we still looking at an antiquated, kind of older
I think
stormwater
it's just two different iterations of it.
Okay, so we
And
got
I don't
20
know that we are, because we just improved
Okay.
them.
Well, just
so-
take out 29, because that looks like it's the same thing as 20.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Right.
It's kind of twice there.
Sorry.
So, yay,
Too many
okay,
things.
so we just eliminated one.
And then I'd like to update the comp plan. I'd like to look at pre-designating
Okay, so you got
territory before it gets annexed.
27.
And I can guarantee, actually for the tree cut, I can guarantee for the updating comprehensive plan, that's not gonna happen in this budget cycle, but I would love to do it next budget
I
cycle
still want to
too.
keep it on the list.
Yeah, okay.
You know,
Right.
that's fine. If it doesn't happen this budget cycle,
It
it should
will
happen
not.
soon.
Absolutely will not.
It should happen at some
We don't
time.
have the money or the
I
time.
get it. I know, it's a
Okay.
big job, but
But it also
I
lets us.
feel like I wanna satisfy all your goals, and I
make no
know
little
that.
plans, as
Yes,
Dan
only
Burnham
make
would
big
say.
plans. Okay.
Yeah,
Who wants to go next? I
All
mean,
right.
I can go next if
Can we
nobody's ready to go next.
I'm done.
Okay, well, I have, I have 4, so I have, I've got my old numbers here. So I've got 25, 27, 22, and 21.
Do you guys hit 119?
Vern had 19.
Okay, because we did talk about it for a long time.
No, he had 20.
That's right.
Oh, 20, okay, sorry.
Were you
Because
guys,
19's gonna happen anyway. We're gonna figure that out, and it's,
well, it's never happened
I
before.
think 19's a subset of 20.
I agree.
Agreed.
I agree. 19's a subset of 20.
Okay.
Let's,
All right, there's another one.
And I'll second 21 and 24 and, oh, pardon me, now I got confused. So many colors. 23, 24, and the 22. Yeah, 22, 23, 24.
Okay, so I have 21, 20, 23, and 24?
22, 23, 24. Stormwater,
22, 23,
clear cutting,
24.
and food
Okay,
cards.
and not 20?
Not 20.
Okay.
Is that everybody? Do you want me to delete the unhighlighted ones?
No, not
I'm
yet.
sorry.
We got 2 more people.
we have a whole list.
Okay, now I just forgot what I said.
Don't worry.
Because I wrote different numbers down, okay? I had 21, I had 24, 20, and 26. That's what I had on my list.
So 27 is also a subset of 26.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That brings us to 6, essentially. Drop.
So, Bob?
Well, I think if we want to get an overall picture of where we're headed and why, that we ought to add one more to this list, and that is,
See what happens when we try to pare things down.
well, wait till you hear what I got to say.
We are.
Sorry.
Is that if we don't understand and know the housing stock that we have in this community, which probably comprises about 80% of our land use pattern, what condition it's in, where it's at, and what services it's going to require in the future, then I think we're we're,
So you're talking about a housing inventory?
housing inventory, right?
I hate to tell you this, but we talked about that when Paul and I worked here.
Well,
I have an update
why
for
didn't you guys get it done?
Because there was only 3 of us.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Well,
but
see,
there was
you
There's
can-
only 4 of us now, I
Yeah.
mean, really, for
You see,
permanent staff.
What you just said there really applies to what we're doing here.
Okay,
You got
so
4
we're adding-
people, and, you know, this is a wish list.
Yes, it is.
And I mean, wish with capital letters.
Well,
You know?
isn't the equitable housing that we're talking about tomorrow night going to try to get at some of that?
No.
No.
Absolutely not.
Okay, it's too bad.
So we actually wanted to do this when we applied for the equitable housing
that
grant,
didn't get
and they
funded.
wouldn't let it. No, I mean, it's not part of the thing. But I do have an update related to the housing inventory. We are working with Clackamas County, so I have a meeting up there tomorrow morning. They did an RFP for a countywide housing inventory assessment. And so we got 2 applicants. We're going to look through that, and then we'll take that back to C4 as a recommendation to complete a countywide housing inventory.
Okay.
So,
So Rob, I got 27 for you. What else?
I would also say, if we are looking at putting this in this budget cycle, when we apply for grants, you know, it takes
Yes, a while.
a year and a half to actually do anything. So just for timeframes, these bigger projects, again, I fear we can't even start. But
Everything on this list here is designed around information. It all boils down to numbers and data. If we had that in front of us so that we could read it and understand it and apply it, wouldn't that be neat? Because I'm sitting here starved for information that I can digest and make some reason out of it. You know, we're throwing information night after meeting after meeting after meeting, and we're asked to understand it within a period of 30 minutes. And we don't have that base of information that we can draw on consistently, because it's always changing or it's not there. But wouldn't it be neat to have a map in front of us and say, this is what our housing stock looks like. These are what our neighborhoods look like in terms of the condition of the housing, where they're located, on and on and on, type of housing. And you know, with that much land dedicated to our land use patterns, it would seem to me that would be fundamental. And the other thing, of course, is traffic, but we'll always be talking about that. But I would ask that either be added or considered under the comp plan update. Did that be?
the housing inventory?
Oh, well, okay, now the housing
Sorry,
inventory. Did you just add that?
Yeah, I think
Oh,
it's,
well,
I think
okay,
it's
leave it there.
separate. Okay, so what else?
Can I add 2 suggestions then, in that sense, just going off what you're saying? One is, if you feel like you need more education or training or knowledge base on things like stormwater standards or traffic, I think this past year we did a Traffic 101 thing. I mean, are there things like that that you want to learn more about? That is a really good planning commission goal. Like, if you pick the items that you want to know more about, so we can better prepare you for planning commission. And then also another thing that shows up on goals commonly, but it's not on your list, is coordinating with other departments, agencies. You know, we do our work sessions with NRC and things like that. So those joint work sessions with other committees is common to be on these
I didn't
lists.
think we had to put that down because we'd already requested that. We wanted to do that again this year.
So again, I'm feeling like you're squeezing me because we already have.
We're squeezing ourselves.
I mean, we're squeezing ourselves because if that's not on the list, I don't know what list that's on. I mean, we will do that, but it should be acknowledged on the list, because if you're doing good work.
What you're saying is we should have, like, with the real 19, continue meeting with other committees.
I think you could
Continue
just
meeting
add
with
it.
other departments, agencies, committees.
Yeah. I would think you could just add it to 20 and say effective communication with the city commission and other agencies.
Yeah, that's what I.
You know, the other thing I want to emphasize, so to speak, you know, we're not going to be here forever. You know, our terms are going to expire.
That's not what you told me.
Huh?
That's not what you told
except
me.
you. You're going to be there. You're going to be the rock there forever.
You're going to be here forever.
But my point is that any information that we can develop as a base of information for future planning commissions so they can refer to it and rely on it as being real, we've done them a service. If all we do is just develop information for ourselves, so that we can make a decision 2 weeks from now, I don't think we've done a service, a planning service. We got to develop a base of information so it can be used for making policy. And I think that's one of the reasons why planning commissions exist, is to get that information before the public and say, hey, here's the problem, and here's what we think is the solution. And I think that type of thing ought to be added to. And
Laura, do we have a buildable lands inventory?
Constantly changing.
We're working with Metro to do a Metro-wide buildable lands inventory right now.
Yeah.
That is part of these housing inventory. That's with the county thing as well.
Right.
But yeah, we're in the process of updating our current one.
That's no small
On number 19, why don't you just say, continue meeting with other planning partners, parentheses, boards, commissions, committees. That kind of covers everybody.
Looks like we haven't moved. We've got one here.
Yeah.
I thought we were going to choose our top two.
Yeah, so this,
I know,
and then the other thing, just with the utmost respect, is that, again, I appreciate these ambitious goals, but there is a lot of workload, and I'm acknowledging how the planning division gets work assigned, and it's not actually from the planning commission.
Right.
We understand
So but with the utmost respect.
Okay, so let us hone this down some more. So
You were talking, you wanted, am I supposed to add the thing about developing a base of knowledge or training? You were just talking about a base or
ongoing training
education?
and information.
yeah, that would be good. Yeah. Yeah.
And information
And I think it goes without
analysis or
saying
gathering, or however we want to say
that the
that.
planning commission understands the limited resources that the city.
Yeah. But I mean, overall though, I think that we should be a policy-making body.
Yeah.
And have the opportunity to make.
at
But
least
you're not,
recommend.
I mean, you could advise the
Right.
city commission.
Well,
We're advising.
Yeah, I mean, a genesis.
There you go.
We can generate policy, and then whether or
But
not.
that's what happens through 21, or when you,
Right.
Yeah,
well, that happens through here.
yeah.
That's the thing, is you would say, hey, city commission,
Yeah, I
tell
mean-
staff to go change the code for true.
But that's always kind of a dynamic thing anyway. I mean, sometimes it comes from the city commission, sometimes it comes from the planning commission, sometimes a citizen comes in and says, hey, you guys need to do, X in there, so then we bring that up.
Okay, so it looks like we've got enough on here for
Exactly.
2 tiers. So what's, 19 and 20 are basically ongoing effective, 19, 20, and 21 are ongoing effective communications and don't necessarily, but so what
Well,
else?
just real quick, I think we can move 24 under 20.
Yeah.
I think you can move all of them into the comprehensive plan update.
Well,
Yeah, I think that's a big bite to chew off.
Yeah, but it's going to be a big bite to chew on anyway.
I know, but I think that's going to be in our second tier because we can't really do anything with it with funding. So, okay, so based on these numbers, I can see we have a consensus on, looks like we have a consensus on number 22. There, at least 3 of us said 22.
Yeah, that was a biggie.
And we have 23 came up 4 times. Let me see, yeah, 23 came up 4 times. I've got 23 came up 4 times. 24 only came up twice. We've got 22, okay, we changed our numbers again, okay. So 22 came up. Well, not everybody said it, but we said it earlier. And 21 is, that's just general. 27 came up once.
If this was your plan, it sounds like you guys were talking about all of these ones.
Well, I'm just trying to look at the numbers, see how many times they came up with each of what we said.
Isn't wetland delineations more under the role of the What's the other committee that Doug represents?
It's planning code stuff.
Okay.
I've got one for 26, which that was me because I was the one that brought up that. So I don't have any problem if that goes on a second tier list.
CIP.
No, citywide facilities plan, because right now we're in this game of, who's on first. Now we've got parks coming up, we've got police.
We don't have facilities plan?
No, we don't.
Oh, my goodness.
And Zach and I were the only two that put down 25.
Now, aren't you normally about the trees and tree cutting and all that? I was surprised that only us two were.
24 only came up twice.
Just
No,
as I thought.
24 came up 3 times.
Yeah, I'm not sure you would be on that.
It's hard, all these are good.
So
They
it
all
looks
have
like
various
19, 20, 21, 22, 23, and 24 came up, and then the other ones are going to be on the second tier list.
Highlight 24, it looks like, 'cause there's 3 of us.
24 made it, because 3 of us said that, and the other ones are going to be on. So we can, let's say we get lot averaging done, then we can move somebody else up.
There's no way I'm going to be able to do those 6 things. I'm just being very clear. And I really appreciate it. I appreciate the
Laura,
support.
could you just give us a moment here?
Okay.
Don't tell us what you can't do. I'm not asking you that. We're going to try to hone this down some more.
Oh, you are? Okay.
So
let me know when you want the input. I will be
make
right
a
here.
space between 24 and 25.
What would it take for us to
And put-
continue meetings?
Well, eliminate, and then just put second tier below that, above that, so that's second tier. Okay. So, given that we can do 19 and 20,
Fairly easy, I would think.
well, we have to work, but it's going to involve us. So how do we want to deal with 22, 23, and 24? So what's your pleasure?
Well, 22 is happening right now.
Yes, it's going to happen.
Do we have to have it on here?
24.
Pardon?
Do we have to have it on here if it's already?
24 is going to be the hardest one
I think we
to
should
do.
just leave it on because we're telling the city
That's
commission,
the least
we brought it to them and now
we're
they're,
already
we're going
doing
to do
our
it.
code amendments for
Politically.
equitable housing
Yeah.
and Beaver Creek Road concept plan
The
implementation.
clear cutting of trees will draw a lot of people and will be very controversial and will take
Good.
a lot of work.
Yeah.
It's one of my favorites. I think it's really should happen.
It's one of my
But
top.
it's part of a larger tree
Sort of a larger,
code.
it's sort of a larger big thing.
But it's huge.
My opinion is I really still like 24, but I think we can get 23 done.
Yeah, I'd rather move 24 down to second tier as part of the comp plan stuff, because I think we're looking at
A bigger pie.
2 years,
Yeah.
of public comment and rule writing and looking at other jurisdictions.
We don't start now, every forest in Oregon City is
I know,
turned down.
because
Yeah, and then
that's
we won't
exactly.
need, then we won't need the plan.
We won't
So
need the
it's-
plan, there
we
you
won't have to
go,
worry about
okay.
it.
We won't be.
Okay, so can we live with those for now?
Yeah.
This is not gonna be finite, we're gonna come back and revisit this again.
no.
And maybe another 3 months, we're gonna
Is
take
that doable?
another 3 months.
Well, yeah, 20 is just trying to put
There's
together a
really
work
a
session.
Right, that's not gonna involve them doing the work, that's gonna involve Public Works. Come in and tell us about it.
Learn about is different than improve. Learn about, I think, is doable.
Well,
Improve.
maybe after we learn about it, we'll have ideas about how to improve it.
Yeah, we're not,
So take out.
Well, implementing those ideas, I think,
Right,
is the.
that's a different project than learning more
Okay,
about
so
it.
just learn about?
Well, and I would
So,
like to be able to itemize the things that need to be improved on it. though,
okay,
somewhat.
we can do that.
Yeah. I don't want to just have this.
So-
pass it
It's not just learning, it's about,
learning about stormwater,
Right.
We know about that. We know that there are issues, and I want to have those.
could you put in parentheses and,
discuss improvements
Yeah.
and as part of that
or
is a
consider
discussion
improvements.
of improvements? Possible improvements.
Brainstorm.
I do acknowledge it. I'm feeling awkward because Public Works isn't here. And this isn't their,
What if we just tabulate?
this is
the
their
issues?
realm,
What
so.
if we just have a goal of tabulating the issues that we see?
Things
with
that we
stormwater?
keep coming up over and over and over
Tracking
again.
issues,
at our-
identifying issues?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or tracking or whatever it is?
And identifying, yeah,
Issues
Instead
of
of having
concern.
to, you
that
know,
we keep hearing at every development thing that we
Right.
get.
And then we can talk to Public Works about those issues that
Right.
we perceive.
Right.
The admin would want them here the whole time because
Sure.
I don't know if the issues we identified are actual
Right.
issues
I don't
or
either.
have we solved
don't-
them because we
Right.
changed the
We don't
stormwater
either.
code and you saw
We
the
don't-
old stormwater code being implemented?
Yeah.
So we
You know what I
need to know, we need to know both. Okay,
You might just think the
So-
sky's falling, so that's fine.
how about that?
We sure talk about trees on
Well,
that-
let me ask a question. Laura, of the first tier, out of those 5, which one do you feel that you can come up with a
Work plan?
solution?
I think
That
22.
you got the manpower to address?
I would like to implement all of your goals very well.
But in the hierarchy, in the scheme of life, the universe and everything, he's
Wait.
asking.
It kind of just depends, like, how many other partners do you want to meet with and how ongoing training information? Like, the more you can specify what you want to learn about, I think the better. I don't want you guys to think that we have ongoing training information. That meant that you thought I was going to get someone to tell you about something and I didn't know that.
No,
As much specificity.
My intent from 20 is to say, we acknowledge that we don't know everything, and we're going to meet with people to learn these things and not just sit and have things come at us. We're
Yeah.
going to reach out for
We're gonna be
information.
proactive.
And we're going to ask you to help us with that, not you to come to us with a list of things.
I think that is perfect, and I love that, and we talked about that in 2017, which is why we did the traffic 101 thing.
Right.
I just want to be clear on how many of those issues are on
It
this
may be
list.
just this one.
Okay.
We've identified this one. If we have another one, like I said, we're going to come back and we'll revisit this list again and make sure that, let's say we've got the stormwater standards information
Yeah,
session.
and in September, we're like, we
Oh,
keep
wait a
hearing
minute,
about this
Yeah.
this thing. So let's change that out. We've got
So we
that.
just want to acknowledge that there are times when we're going to reach out and ask for
Yeah, we
information.
want to be proactive.
And this is
About
one thing
reaching
in
out
specific.
to the neighborhood associations and getting their feelings for what they're concerned about.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
but we'll take that'll be our burden, not yours.
Yes.
So what under
you know.
19, who do you want to meet with within this? Who's your goal to meet with? Is there anyone specific or?
I think specifically it would be TAC and natural resources, because those are the two that we connect with all the
Intersect
time.
with.
Okay.
And then, I don't think, offhand, I can't think, I don't know who would meet with the library board, unless they've got a TAC concern.
Not unless they're going to be building something again, which I don't think, I think they're done.
The school district came up
Yes.
this year and we
Right.
did meet with
Yes.
the school district.
School district.
But so I don't, am I writing that down?
Yeah,
School district.
School district. I would say if there's a way we can have just sort of an informal session with the CIC, I think that would be good.
What, to do what? Just so I'm understanding, like.
To chat with them, get them to better understand what we do and what role we play. Because
I'd like to find out what the CIC needs for better public involvement.
Because goal 1 is part of.
What do you mean for, sorry, the reason why I'm asking these clarifying questions is because planning staff does presentations on what planning commission and how to give effective public comment and stuff all the time.
But it's one of those things where they're not meeting with us, they're getting it through somebody else. So if they don't want to meet with us, I mean, we can extend the invitation
No,
and ask
actually
them if
they
they'd
would.
like to meet with us and just kind of have a discussion.
Okay.
About, what are the issues you're seeing that's coming up? Here's the issues we see from people coming to talk to us.
And we'll touch base as it comes closer
Sure.
to those.
Yeah.
To sort of pare down some agenda or something like that.
Historic Review Board.
What I would like to see,
You want historic review board on here?
at least every quarter,
Not do that.
was a presentation from Kerry about the latest and the greatest of
What cases have come down the pipe.
various legal issues that have come through the courts or that
They just handle legal issues.
We do one every January. Is that not sufficient? Do we need
I
more?
think what Bob's talking about is more current events,
Yeah.
not how to deal with quasi-judicial
Yeah.
land use process.
right.
I don't know that we'll have time for that, given that we still have to process current, plus this list keeps getting longer.
It's not getting
To be
longer.
honest. I mean, to meet with all those groups, that means out every other month, we're gonna have to have a work session with another group. We don't do that much now.
Right.
Well, that's only 5.
Every other month is 6.
Well, but then you're doing work sessions for all, you're having a work session every month, right?
Well,
Because all these put
I
together.
signed up for it, I'm there.
Well, I mean.
You may end up with extra hearings, is all I'm saying.
That's all right.
Yeah, and it's possible that we could meet with, TAC and NRC together, because they're not regulatory, so they have a different take on what they can do. And so, like, when we met with TAC,
We talked specifically about
on natural resource, it was, what can we do to help you implement your vision? Where are the barriers happening to your vision? So when we see things come across our desk, like clear cutting, is there a way that we can work with that? I mean, and so like TAC and NRC, we could probably meet together, because of their advisory boards as opposed to legislative bodies. And CIC is just too big to meet with as a different group or as a combined group, but.
So we have to be prepared that when we get this feedback, that they're gonna say something that we're not prepared to do.
We have to help manage expectations, but I think, I've heard before from CIC people that, well, we don't see you guys, and I said, well, come on down.
And let's try to make this maybe more of an aspirational list.
It's aspirate, yes.
Instead
It
of
is.
saying, we're not gonna hold you to like, okay, we didn't meet with the school district.
Oh, my God, yes, life in the universe is ending.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
Is that okay?
I appreciate the flexibility.
Pick 3 of the 5 or something, or pick 2.
Well, and
I will treat it as the
whatever.
list, though. I mean, we're gonna want to do everything that you want us to
We
do.
get that, you guys have a lot going on, and, this is our wish list.
Okay.
It's like the Sears catalog.
So we can, do you want these like slightly reworded, or how is this, is there a voting on this, or is there?
Nodding our heads.
How does this work?
I think that's what we've been trying to do, is come to consensus. And I think that that's probably sufficient.
Yeah.
Would that be okay with everybody?
The one thing, I'd say on 24 is, instead of consider allowing food carts, it'd be consider food cart regulations. So, because we want to look at what it exists, and then, and then the learn from all the Portlandias, what's the pro and the con.
Yes.
And again, it's second tier, so this is,
How to keep them from not catching on fire.
Well,
That's a fire code issue, but yeah, they've been having lots of problems with them. But anyway.
Okay, so we might just add like a the or an
How are we
and or
updating the
something.
citywide facilities plan when we don't have one to begin with?
I almost think there's one from the 70s, though. I'm not sure.
I don't think that counts. I think.
I don't think it actually counts, but it like technically kind of is there. So I'm not really sure, but
Yeah, I think update the comprehensive plans one, but
it was just a bit.
I think they're technically, but it's not, in reality.
We need to look at it. I mean,
Well-
somebody needs to look at it, and maybe that's something we say to the city, this is not, the way that departments are asking to have their facilities updated is not working.
Yeah.
It's got to be some sort of a comprehensive look at, okay, well, what the heck do you need? When do we need it, and how can we get it, instead of this free-for-all, which is kind of what we're having right now.
And that might not be a planning item.
It may not be. It's sort of a citywide
It's an
item.
engineering thing, really.
No, it's not engineering. It's basically,
we approve it.
it's
but-
all the departments trying to get together and trying to be reasonable with one another, instead of, well, you got one, now I want one, and so.
Yeah, there's
anyway.
no planning criteria that would go into play when that, so I'm just
for approval.
I don't know.
It would help with citywide
The more of,
budgeting and planning.
it might be a recommendation of the city commission for policy.
Annexations talks about consistency with public facilities plans, and
To me,
But we do have public facilities
are adequate.
To me, it
plans.
makes sense in terms of allocation of city resources and not making it be happenstance.
But it's more of a-
It's very much a city commission thing.
Yes. Yeah.
But I think if we can look at stuff and maybe do some groundwork of, surprise, there hasn't been something done since,
1970.
Yeah.
And it's like, if we'd had a facilities plan, we could have been out, was the Carnegie the best place for the library? Instead of this, well, we couldn't buy the land here, so now we're going to do it here.
Okay, Nick, we could say assess the need for an update.
Date, yes. I like that.
Assess
Assess the need for an update.
Assess the need for an update.
Recommend to the city commission, wait. Again, I don't know that that's,
Again, well, as you know, because I'm a planner, everything to me is planning, and it's all about planning for the needs of our community for the future. And if it isn't planning where land is available and allocated for facilities, it seems to me it's just.
shouldn't that drop down under comprehensive plan?
Because it's just reactive. Right now, that's all we're doing.
I completely understand.
Yeah, no, I mean,
just,
yeah.
Isn't that, to your point, shouldn't it drop down under comprehensive plan?
I would say no, for the simple reason that we want to look at it as, we don't want it to be part of this larger comprehensive plan. We want to,
But public
look at.
facilities plans are usually a part of a comprehensive.
Yeah.
And it can be
It
in the
may
future, but
become
it's
that.
sort of like, well, what do we need? I know when we looked at the library, is the library going, what happens when we reach the threshold of the library, of the capacity it has right now? We don't have a plan in place to say, where do we go next?
Yeah, I mean, we've got these three huge, comprehensive plan areas, but the only thing that was implemented into them is we're going to need pump stations.
Yeah. What about
But
branch libraries? What
or
about?
a branch library? What about a fire station? What
Yeah,
about,
but-
I mean, I know the fire station's not our thing.
Well, they no, they
still
do,
have to
those are
work with them
included in the
too.
those are, they do that work when they do the concept plan.
But I
all
mean, it's-
the
it's-
school district, the
it's
library, all that
big
stuff.
picture thinking about what are the needs of the community going to be. It's just like this facility. When we decided to buy this, people came to the city commission and said, is this the best place to do it? Well, we need it now. Well, see, again, that was reactive. We should have been thinking down the road about where City Hall needed to be and what was going to be our need for staffing, facilities,
Yeah, you guys didn't
beyond
fit.
this. And so
because
now,
they didn't plan.
and now this is too small,
I'm completely agreeing with you.
so I
I'm
mean, I'm
just
just
saying
trying-
it's
I'm
probably
trying-
not a planning division thing.
I'm just saying that it's under the big purview of planning. I'm not saying it's planning department, but it is planning, which planning is part of that.
So can I clarify, first tier, you mean within this budget cycle, and second tier, you mean in next budget cycle? Is that right?
And when you say that, you're saying 2018.
Yeah. The budget cycles run on a biennium, so it would be starting in
2020.
July 1, 2019.
19, right.
So, yeah.
2019, 2020.
Yeah, this isn't going to happen overnight.
No, but I think that it's, instead of just
Jeannie.
continuing on, being reactive, I think that this is a good roadmap for us to follow. Yeah, it might come to be that some of these things have to get kicked out for whatever
And they probably
reason.
will, but again, we're starting with the granite countertop, and then we're gonna say, wait a minute, we can't afford the granite countertop, we're gonna look at Corian, and then maybe we don't do Corian, maybe we say we gotta go with Formica. But at least we're up here, and we can continue to hone this down and hone this down and hone this down.
Well, you can't kick the can down the road if you don't ever buy the soda.
Exactly.
Damn. I wish I thought of that.
Amy and my weird
like it.
sayings.
Let's write down the Damonisms.
Excuse
I know,
me,
it's pretty good.
I think this meeting needs to end in 20 minutes.
Yes, we're getting there.
Or less.
We're getting there. I already said, please go home. If you
I'm
need
not
to go home.
talking about me.
No,
I'm
I know.
talking about the meeting
I
needs to
understand-
end.
we
It has
understand.
nothing to do with me.
We understand.
Waiting out here while we just go on and on and on.
All right, so we're good with
Okay,
this?
yes.
And then, so Chair McGriff, I don't have, it's over there, is scheduled to do an update to the city commission this month. And so then she's authorized to use this list, and generally the updates of what we've been up to last year, so this is like a look ahead, look back, look forward.
Because I need to draft something and have you help me with it.
All right, so she's okay.
I want to say just one word in closing. It's not so much what we say.
Oh, that's more than one word.
You're going to get it. You know it.
I've had chocolate tonight.
Good.
Watch out.
You're on the sugar high.
Yes.
It's not so much what we say, it's how we say it.
Well, then Bob's coming with me.
Words matter.
And we don't want to present the commission with a financial tsunami, because what we're proposing here is going to cost a few bucks. because we're not going to do a comprehensive plan by ourselves.
thought you were writing the check.
That's why we have consultants. And you're looking at least 100, 150, maybe $200,000.
But that's not reason, that's no reason not to plan.
No, but what I'm asking, Paul, is that we ought to be realistic in our expectations of what we expect from other people.
Yeah.
And other people of the commission.
Fair enough.
And I don't want to hit them with a sledgehammer.
Right.
I mean, our intentions are honorable, but let's get real about the arena in which we're dealing. We're dealing with other people that have to assume a certain amount of responsibility. So, you know, this a bit about planning commission's actions, reactions. Essentially, 90% of what we do after we have a comp plan is react. That's life. We react.
But then we have information by which to make.
That's the point I was trying to
I
make.
know, that's what I'm saying. We totally all agree with you on that.
And isn't it funny that we're overwhelmed in a digital age with more information that we can handle that turns out to be useless?
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, just, you know, I think we ought to keep that in mind and not fool ourselves. I think we have honorable intentions, but
I did notice that on our agenda, we did not have the item that we normally have that says public comments for items that are not on the agenda. It's usually at the top.
It's not on there?
Nope.
That's my fault, my apologies.
Yep.
Well, we've got a
Because
gentleman out there.
Let's give Bob his chance. Yeah.
And then Bob, Robert LaSalle, and then we're gonna have communications from Laura.
Make it brief, 20 minutes.
I had a little reminder on my phone, Carrie, it came up.
I'll take my
Ending time.
privileges representing the neighborhood association. Take 15 minutes.
Nope, sorry. This is not a public hearing. We are not subscribing to that scenario.
I'm just joshing you.
I know you are, but we're joshing.
Laura will want to hear this. In your planning commission bylaws, Article 3, membership, item A, states that my name is Bob LaSalle, I live in Oregon City. States that planning commission members shall serve no more than 2 full consecutive years.
Years or terms?
Years.
Oh, okay.
That should be changed to terms.
Yeah.
2 consecutive years? I think we're all in violation of that.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, no.
And I just happened to come across it.
Good catch.
For whatever reason. Also, my other item is, I'd like to recommend that you consider having your officers have 2-year terms. Now, we did that in the planning commission, in the TAC, and we've done it at the neighborhood level. And it seems to work better because the person takes over as chair, and it takes you a year, with the exception of Chair McGriff, of course, to kind of get on your feet. No matter how long you've been on a committee or a commission or whatever, it takes a little while to get on your feet, and then things start smoothly flowing along. It just seems like a better way of doing it rather than having to elect a new chair every single year. And it's with the possibility of starting all over again. Now, saying that, if you do decide to do that, you have to be kind of careful how you do it, because when we did it in the Transportation Advisory Committee, I was elected in December to serve another 2-year term as the TAC chair. However, my term ended that December. So I was elected as chair, but there was no guarantee that the mayor was going to reassign me in January.
Or reappoint you.
Or
He might have reassigned you.
appointed, yeah. So we are making changes in the TAC bylaws to cover that issue, which is, pretty easy to take care of. But anyway, that's a recommendation I think you might be worth considering.
It's good stuff.
Good considering. I think we should leave it open in case there's a coup.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, if you wanted to change that, so those bylaws are from 2000.
How many
So
thousands will that cost to change?
Anyway, Laura.
Since then, we created this 2.24, which is a section of our code, which does have that election of officers. So if you wanted to change the terms, then we would do a code amendment to the code rather than just the bylaws. Okay, so a couple of quick things. We talked about Chair McGriff giving the Planning Commission update on January 17th to the City Commission. We also talked about the adoption.
Just a question on that. I would hope that if other planning commissioners want to come, that we do not run into quorum issues.
Carrie, how's that work?
Because we're not having a meeting, but
No, we shouldn't have a quorum, more than a quorum there to talk about planning commission business.
we should not have more than.
No.
Well, what if everybody wants to come?
What?
Sorry. We
Less.
shouldn't have a quorum, not more than a quorum.
We should have if we're gonna have a quorum, we need to know we're gonna have a quorum, then we're gonna have to notice
Sure.
it as a public meeting
Sure.
with a quorum there. So
Yes.
we just need to poll everybody and know if we're gonna have a quorum or not.
Okay, that's fine.
How come the last few times under our previous chair president, we all showed up for his presentations to the city? Was that what we were breaking the law back then?
It was bad.
I know I came, you came.
I came.
Yeah.
and
Charles
I think Bob was
did his
here, and-
presentation.
Yeah, whenever Charles did, we all typically were here.
I can't remember us doing a quorum at a city commission.
We just sat in the audience
were
while they
just there.
talked. We didn't say a word, so.
Well, I think it depends on if are you all gonna get up at the dais and
No,
present
no,
anything?
no.
Okay.
My question was, if other members of the commission want to come, I'm hoping that we don't run into quorum issues.
Sounds like the legal answer is as long as you don't have a quorum speak.
Okay. So,
Cool, yeah. I can't come because it's Wednesday night, so.
because I'm Jones and I'm going to talk to you later, so.
Uh-oh.
And then how does that work for serial meetings when they're talking about things like this?
How does serial meetings have anything to do with this?
Or if they, okay, disregard.
I think we're talking about these goals. So we've had a meeting tonight to identify these goals. Denise is going to work with Chair President or Vice President Espy, and they're going to coordinate a presentation. They may send it to you. I would hope they would send it to Laura
We will send it to
to
everybody.
evaluate it, and then Laura will send it out to everybody.
Yes, because
And
everybody will
then
look at it.
you're going to come at the 17th, and Chair McGriff is going to present this,
I can't do it on
And-
the 17th.
or whatever day it's going to be.
Seriously, I'm going to be in Washington DC.
Okay.
That's why I said I think it's going to be bumped later because I have to go to a meeting.
Okay, let me know when it is.
Yeah. So let's see if we can get it
Paul,
scheduled.
can you
in.
do it?
Sure. If you want me to.
I mean, it's up to
Well,
Laura.
it's up to,
It's scheduled tentatively on their
Chair,
agenda
too.
for
But
the
it's-
17th.
But
If
it's
not,
tentative, so can we just bump it?
you'd have to bump it to February. You can have the 7th or the 21st.
The 7th would be great.
February 7th?
Yes.
Okay. And then, as a reminder, these updates are 5 minutes, and then with the questions and answers, they end up being 10 total, but it's a 5-minute presentation.
I thought we got 15 minutes.
We're not a neighborhood.
That is not correct.
okay.
No.
So did we
5
did-
minutes is pretty short.
So February 7th?
Yes.
Okay. And then
That's my window.
the other thing is that the city commission did adopt a policy that says that no committee can go till later than 10 p.m. unless you have unanimous approval by everybody that is present at that committee to go later, and the latest you can go is 11. Those sync up with our dates that are unofficial policy that we had been talking about as well. The other thing is that we adopted action minutes as opposed to summary minutes, and so they will be less descriptive than they are right now. And the last thing is that
Does that mean that they're going to be similar to what the city commission has?
they're going to be less than what the city,
Because
everybody's minutes are all going to be the same.
Their
and-
minutes really don't say a whole lot.
Yeah, they're more action-based. And because of that, we hope to get the minutes turned around quicker, because they don't have to type everything everybody says.
I don't have to type
Can I ask
everything
a
everybody
question
says.
about the legacy project?
Yes.
Did they sign the easement? Did the
Uh,
property
we're
owner
s-
sign the easement?
The easement is signed. We're still working forward with the property owner to move forward the project.
Yeah,
We do not have a signature on the joint permit application for
That's
the
what's
core.
lacking, not the easement.
How come, what's the holdup? How come it's not, why is it being so intransigent?
We're still working with them.
They're trying to figure that out. She can't say that on the record.
All right.
And then also, the mayor did appoint Commissioner Mahoney to the planning commission. There's that.
Imagine if you sat here.
Thanks for everybody.
That's all I
was gonna
have.
go chain myself to somebody's car if you hadn't gotten appointed.
Oh, is that right?
You-
Is there? Oh.
I told you I'd go to the mat for you, Mahoney.
Right, that's it.
Boy, I tell you, can't choose your friends, can you?
That's it.
God picks your
Did you just
friends,
make an
that's right,
airplane out of your
picks
people?
family.
How are you, Jared?
Meeting?
If you have nothing else, I'm good, you know, I'm here for you.
Then whack.
Get the hammer.
Now it's official.
Yay.